Bravo. Okay, and we are, what are we doing? Recording, streaming?
Apparently.
Bit both? Both? Just to let you all know. Okay, I'm doing a little bit of a change to the order shortly, but I will get to that in a minute. So first of all, receive and accept apologies for absence.
Simon Browning, Lorraine Corrigan Turner, Martin Dory, Jamie Wright, Alex Lewitt and Philip Purchase.
Thank you. Any declarations of registered non-registered disclosable pecuniary interests and non-registerable interests? None. Thank you. Any dispensations? No. Okay, on to the minutes of full council. And that is to receive, confirm and sign the minutes of the council meeting held on the 14th of July. Propose that.
Second.
Thank you. And all those in favour, please. How many is that then? 3, 4, 5? 6? 6. Against and abstain.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, did you get the apology for the choker?
I didn't.
I've not seen
She's
one.
not had
got
anything.
broken ankles, so
Oh.
she can't drive. So I'll give her apologies because I know
Thank
she can't
you.
drive. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, no,
Sorry
that's
to
fine.
interrupt.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, did you have all the numbers for that last one?
Yeah, that was carried 6.
Brilliant, thank you. And the minutes for committees. To receive and note the minutes of the committee meetings listed below. So first of all, the planning committee on the 3rd of August. Okay, all those in favour, please. Yeah.
I'll abstain.
So all those against and abstention. 2.
You're only noting you're receiving the minutes, you don't have to be there. Just.
Okay, what's that? That's fine.
just so you know.
What's that all the time?
As full council, you're accepting the minutes
Oh,
of the committee, so you
okay.
don't have to be on the committee, you won't be there.
I should know that, shouldn't
Yes.
Yeah, 2 abstentions.
Yeah.
And then Oversight Committee, propose we receive and note the minutes for the 21st of July Oversight Committee meeting. Thank you. All those in favour? And against and abstain. Thank you. And I propose we receive and note the minutes for the Staffing Committee meeting held on the 28th of July. Thank you. All those in favour?
There's one more opening.
All those against and abstain. 1. Thank you. Okay, and on to the minutes recommendations. To consider and agree. So first of all, we've got from the Oversight Committee that the Oversight Committee fully support a literary festival for 2023 with a budget of up to £18,000 to provide the event. Yes, Peter.
So I should have done my homework on this one, but I haven't. It skipped me. But when you said £18,000, it seems
Yes.
quite a lot. How does that compare to the previous budget, please?
It is more. I can't tell you about the papers in front of me, but the 18,000 is the spend, and what is not currently in that is that's not a net budget, so there will be an income budget to offset some of it. Now, if you'd asked me before, I would have got the paper from the last committee. There is a reasonable income of sponsorship and ticket sales.
Mark provided quite an extensive list, table of all the costings to us.
The reason that it was increased as well because the staffing in the end had to come out of the staffing budget, didn't they? And he wanted to put it all into
In your emails, maybe.
I've been having trouble with them. I was struggling to actually get the agenda.
Come in.
See, I had to
Are there
go
any
through
other
my notes.
metrics apart from just a purely financial metric? Is there anything else where we can judge the success or relative failure of such an event?
Yeah, well, the oversight committee went through a full report with the manager as to the numbers for the attendees, the events, the feedback and such. So there is full reports. It might just be terms of your joining and what papers went out when. But yeah, the committee did consider the full gambit of what the event was.
And this recommendation comes from that.
I was thinking more in terms of, is there any way of drilling down into the sort of tourism benefit, economic development benefit of that event, rather than X number of people attending and all have a good time? Is there any kind of, this event increased the spend in the town by X number of hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, whatever? No particular way of doing it.
No, we don't. I don't believe we went to that depth in this analysis. It was more about the attendees. Did we? Again, we haven't seen so many reports. I'm not sure there was anything about in town and out of town.
No,
That
I
one.
don't think so. Not
So
that I
that
know
was
of.
looking at a different report. I've seen a report on that, on the welcome back. But yeah, I don't think that.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I just, with our new learning colleague,
Sure.
we'd obviously like to research that and bring it back to us on how we can do that, because it's going to be a very complicated thing to do.
Well, it's complicated, yeah. I was thinking more, was there outreach to the Tourist Information Board? Has anybody booked rooms because they're attending that festival? Can we say X number of people came to Bude specifically for this festival? Because-
Yes, we did work with the Tourist Information Centre in terms of selling tickets. I think the questions you're raising, I do doubt if that level of detail was collected, but in raising the question, it's something we can look at next year as to what other data we do get, whether we can.
I'm not against putting my hand up to spending the money, but you kind of like to see a bit of benefit. Even if it's only the Tourist Information Board reported that so many extra people came to Bude, and we can assume, because this is what people tend to spend, that this increased the revenue to Bude of Y amount of pounds.
It's the reason why it would be included in, like, as a report.
There was some anecdotal evidence,
Yeah.
quotes from people who had attended saying we came from out of town and we'll return next year. And I know the TIC want to promote the event alongside their accommodation and events specifically for next year.
Yeah. Okay. Peter? Thanks, Kath.
Yeah, Kevin, for your benefit and Vicky for your benefit, I'm a non-executive director of Bude Area Tourist Board, so in the last board meeting this was discussed. All right, you might know it. And I think generally the feeling on the board of BATB was that it was a good event. I think that they felt there was a lot of lessons to be learned from it, and that there was a lot of room for improvement, certainly in the venue selection and in the way the tickets were sold as well. I think there are some issues that were brought to light. And I have no problem whatsoever in supporting the event again, but I haven't seen the background paper, and it might well be my fault that I haven't seen it. It didn't pop out as something that I remember reading, and it's quite a big spend without, as Kevin says, the sort of supporting information. On the face of what I've heard and the level of warmth from Bude Area Tourist Board, I'm happy to support it. But I think I'd retrospectively like to go back and look at what we've brought forward and hope that next year, when we run it, there'll be a lot closer link with Bude Area Tourist Board and Tourism Information Centre to make best use of what they can offer us in supporting the event.
So, normally when we have a recommendation, obviously from one of the committees, we ask for people's votes on it, for or against, and then if it was an overwhelming against, then that committee presumably looks at that again and
Yeah, ultimately, as full council, you could accept the recommendation by
Yes.
voting for or
Yeah.
reject it. So.
yeah. Okay.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
Do we roughly know how much it cost to put on this year?
I've got the breakdown here from the Oversight Committee. It was about 10,000 by the looks of it, and the income was about 7. So there's no breakdown on there as to why the increase of 8,000 this year. Do you know?
We were in the meeting.
Yeah.
It was quite expensive, wasn't it? But
It was.
He explained it was a lot of it was about staffing costs. That's my recollection of it. I don't know if anyone else can explain, but we kind of discussed it around the table for over an hour. It was quite quite,
Yeah.
like, we really
Well,
went into
without
detail, so
without
it's-
having the paper in front of me,
Yeah.
Yeah.
my recollection is, because originally, it was resourced out of a vacancy.
yeah.
The vacancy is now full, but we still want some of the extra resource that helped deliver this year in terms of the expertise and the industry contacts. So in effect, there is a higher bill through that. That's the main bit I recall in terms of the
Okay. Yes, Katie.
I mean, if anyone wants to see it, I mean, we did record it, so you can go back and watch the Insight Committee meeting, have all the notes there as well. You can see me explain stuff. I mean, things that was raised, such as I was really keen to see staffing like separated out in the budget still, because people's time, even though we're paying them like a yearly wage, it's still good to know how much it's cost them in terms of time and things like that. You know. So yeah, like please feel free to go on Teams or wherever, or just ask people to pass over the video. But it's there, ready for us to watch. So
Yeah, Mark spent a lot of time, I think, breaking it all down and coming up with this figure. And yes.
So I'm very much quite happy to support it, but do we put something in now at the resolution stage that we want that data collected next year? Because 18k is effectively how much we spent on supporting local groups, and we expect them to prove to us that it has a benefit to the community before we hand them the money. So it would seem reasonable that we apply the same criteria to ourselves and throw in 18k at a project. Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know how you want to word that, but
Okay, so if we go with transport, yeah, so agree that we as a council fully support the Literary Festival for 2023 with a budget of up to 18,000 to provide the event.
With the request to collect performance data.
yeah, I'm happy with that.
So if basically last year's event ran for a net 3k cost to this council, that's potentially money well spent. But if because of the way things were accounted for last year, we are accounting for things differently, and the budget has to reflect that in terms of staffing hours, so it won't be a net 3k, it might end up being a net almost 18k, or maybe a net 8 or 9k, then that's a significantly different ballpark that we're operating in.
Okay. So propose that we fully support it with the request for
additional
yeah.
data, effectively.
I'll second that.
Thank you. So all those in favour then, please. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, and then the staffing committee, that a job evaluation and HR review process to include organisational wide staff and councillor functions be commissioned. The town clerk, in consultation with the mayor and councillor Dorey, to appoint an appropriate contractor within a maximum budget of £8,000 funded from the projects reserve. Appoint an appropriate contractor, yeah, done that, sorry. Read the same one again. Okay. So, we didn't have a paper, did we? Because, no. No. Yes, Kevin.
I might be being a little bit on the thick side here, but I'd like to sort of understand what we're going to get out of this review. But because it's all right, have a review, you know, see what the guys are doing, what, you know, are they overworked, are they underworked, but to include the councillors in that, what are we doing? Are we benchmarking against best practice? Are we doing it for financial reasons to find out if we can screw some people to make them work harder for less money? What's the objective, really? That's what I'm asking.
Okay, so Martin's original paper, it's very centred around making sure that the staff are being paid for what they do, you know, the correct amount, that they are being looked after, they're happy in the roles that they're doing and everything like that. It's all about the benefit of the staff, basically, and the well-being of the staff. As far as councillors, I don't know what, as an official kind of benchmark, would be used for a councillor. It's a bit of a strange. But for us, we want to make sure that we're doing enough for the officers to be able to do their jobs correctly.
So effectively, it's not a sort of performance review.
No.
It is a kind of benchmark against best practice. So we look at how staff are treated elsewhere, the sort of workloads people have got. If we're expecting too much of people, then that gets flagged up. So it's that kind of best practice review, as opposed to a formal job evaluation type thing.
Well, it's a job evaluation in terms of payments, because and that's, the council's already agreed to do that element, because with the move to living wage, real living wage status, we wanted to make sure that the pay scales would actually make sense, given that certain staff obviously being upgraded in their pay because of that. So that was a little commitment the council already made, and really this has expended that. Whilst that's being done, people are being spoke to around their roles to job evaluate. The proposal that came through staffing was to take that a step further and look at about how we work and as an organisation, just to make sure that there's organisational effectiveness.
So for example, if somebody is doing a job for this council, but somebody else, maybe working for Bob in Melanson, is doing the same job but for more money, that sort of thing gets flagged up.
There's a bit of that, and it's also about the differentials between staff to make sure that, equal pay is a very big thing within local government or across all sectors of government, especially to make sure, especially around gender balance and such, that we're not mispaying one group as opposed to another. It's quite an important matter.
And equally, as far as spreading it councillor-wide, that is going to help us to understand if we're, meeting often enough to be able to give the officers enough information to be getting projects. They're kind of waiting for us sometimes, so perhaps we need to meet more often, to be able to get them the information they need. So it's all that kind of stuff as well that would be really useful to see.
I just needed to get in my head what the objective was, because staffing can be any number of different things.
Yeah. Yes, Peter.
When any organisation performs an organisational review, which is effectively what this is, it's usually driven by desire for change and desire to make sure that the organisation is equipped to do the job that the people that are managing it want it to do. And I really feel that we've got a desire for change, which was demonstrated at the last election. But I, at the same time, feel, and I'm questioning in my own mind, and it might just be the fact that I haven't had the communications on a level that I perhaps like to, it's whether or not we know what we want to be sufficiently to drive that process. And I think allowing somebody else to drive it for us would be a very bad thing. It needs to be driven from the council itself. And by that I mean us as councillors. We need to make it absolutely plain what we want the organisation to be able to do and the scope of its activities before an organisation can come in and help us build a framework to deliver that. And I sense that there's a bit of weakness at this point in that bit.
Katie? I'd just like to point out that's not what they've been doing exactly. They're not going to be coming in with this is how you should run your entire organisation. They're going to be seeing if someone's overworked. They're going to be seeing if people are having enough time off or even taking their holidays. They're going to be seeing if a person is being left on their own and they feel like they're not getting communication from their managers or peers that they feel like they need to be able to do their job. It's more abstracted as a business than basically forcing this this whole organisation in a certain direction. It's just, I guess, seeing what we've got and just seeing where those friction points are. It's ultimately about staff happiness and about councillor happiness as well, but mainly about staff happiness right now. Because especially, I guess, with a fresh set of eyes, with people who have been in modern workplaces, it's very clear that the ways that staff have been treated over the years hasn't necessarily been at the quality that I would do for my own business. So it's bringing in that experience that I've had working for other businesses and bringing in that experience in my own business as manager for my own business to go, hey, I think we could be doing better as an organisation. And we've made some steps in that, in the fact that obviously, you know, we are starting people on the real living wage, you know, rather than just the minimum wage. But we should be leading as one of the biggest organisations in Bude in how we treat our employers and the respect and like making sure they're happy, basically.
Yes, Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for benchmarking against best practice. I think we should be doing that, but we also need to be aware that you can compare apples and bananas. So if we're going to be benchmarking best practice, we need to be benchmarking best local government practice and best local government practice at this level. So we need to be finding equivalent councils,
We did.
preferably locally.
We were looking at
We have done some of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm from taking up Pete's point. I did a little bit of background reading. I wasn't able to do a great amount because I have life, but which I know is now given over to this council. But I read somewhere that part of this process was about building capacity. I don't particularly agree that we should build in capacity for us for a just in case. If we have specific projects we want to take forward, then those projects need to be staffed. But the concept of building in capacity so that down the line we might use that officer time to do things that we're not currently able to do is not something that I'm comfortable with. If we review, then we review as it exists today, and if we want to move forward with new projects, then that's a different thing. But building in spare capacity for a just in case, because we want to be an ambitious council, doesn't seem to me to be best practice.
I'd like to highlight that again.
Okay.
So you don't want to be running your staff at 100%. But each staff member, they're going to have downtime where they're ill or sick or tired or, you know, they're just having an off day. And we've also, because you might not have been aware, but we do actually have quite a big list of projects that we have already all agreed of as a council, and that we also inherited some of those projects too, and that those are being prioritised and things like that, but we haven't even got the capacity to prioritise at the moment those projects. So we are agreeing things as a council, but we don't even see, like, we can't even see through the fog to see how much capacity we even have. So to build in, like, some capacity isn't assuming we're going to be fulfilling that capacity. It also informs us as councillors we shouldn't be filling up to a certain point as well. So we're like, we can take one project every 4 months. If basically this comes out and says you can take one project every 4 months or something like that, then fine, we can sort of prioritise and figure out what that's going to be. But right now we don't even know what that is. So it's like things are piling and piling and piling, and it's actually to prevent that piling is what we're trying to do.
Again, I take the point completely, and if there are projects lined up which cannot move forward because there's not enough staff, then there needs to be more staff. But if those projects are closed projects, so they happen over a period of time and then finish, then the sort of staff that comes in will be different than if they're an open-ended allocation of resources. I'm just a little bit spurious about the concept of building in capacity into a system, because the worst thing you can do is take somebody on and then let them go again, because there's a lot of costs involved in that. It doesn't ultimately do that individual any good, and you know, just not comfortable with the concept of spare capacity.
Okay. So back to yes.
Can I just make one point?
Yeah.
To quote best practice, I mean, we've got no idea
Yeah.
what is a good council. What is, you tell me what a good council is. Only the people who live around the area would say what is a good council. We might be an exemplar.
There are, we might well be, and we might well be.
Dark it, so well, we might
We might be screwing staff to the wall. We might, this review might say, you've got double the staff in there. But there will be within local government. I've worked in local government albeit a long time ago, but there will be councils held up as getting good value for money, and councils held up as treating their staff properly. And there will be metrics for all this best practice stuff. So these consultants, whoever they are, will be able to drill into that and see how we relate to a set of criteria. They won't be shooting in the dark with effing and peeing in the wind, whatever. But they will have the metrics they can apply. But that's a different thing to building capacity.
Yeah, and that's that isn't what we're discussing anyway. So Peter, did you have something? And then
I did, but I'm afraid it's restating the previous point, because obviously Kate's come back a couple of times and Kevin's had a couple of goes.
Yeah.
And listening to them, it just reinforces what I thought in my mind, was that there's no point throwing resource at a problem that's overwhelming unless we know what we want to do as a council. And I'm not talking about a massive piece of work. I think it just requires a nominated set of councillors to sit down, look at the projects list, look at the staffing list, look at the scope of our activities, and just get our heads around it and say, this is how we see ourselves over the next 3 to 5 years. And then we bring the consultants in to help us achieve that in a reasonable and best practice way. But without that first piece, I think it's going to be very difficult for any consultants to deliver on improving the organisation and helping us to where we want to be. And like I say, it's not a massive piece of work.
Is that not a slightly different thing though? Is that really, I think it's Simon.
Oh yeah, sorry, I have another point, but just to directly answer that, is that not the job of the staffing committee?
No.
No? Well, I'm not on it, but when we go past this one, we're about to move on to creating another role to hire a deputy clerk.
Yeah.
And then we're going to hire consultants to come in and tell us whether we need to hire a deputy clerk, which we've already done.
Yeah.
So we're actually going to make decisions about staff capacity and then hire consultants to tell us whether we need to.
I mean that.
I came in thinking this was going to be simple, but having listened to what's going on, we've got a chicken and an egg scenario rolling around the room
Not
now.
with the deputy position.
If
Because
I,
there is another. Yeah.
it's not. It's not for me to argue as
No,
no, for or against. In terms, I'm just trying to advise in terms of what's been decided. And I think just to remind you, there's two things here, and without redoing a staffing committee, which I'm going to be conscious of. But in terms of the job evaluation part, that's something which the council has committed to do.
Yeah.
And in fact, what the staff committee then discussed was to extend the scope of that. And I don't think necessarily the discussion was, in my mind, was about necessarily capacity. It was about how we operate.
Yes.
I think that's the most important element to take on that.
Yeah.
It's about how we actually function and make decisions and the communication, because I think this is and that does start to get into things like prioritisation and those elements. But I don't think that's necessarily a capacity question. And I would advise, obviously, capacity and what the council decides to do still will be with the council. Whatever a consultant comes in and says, the council still then decides as to whether it likes that approach or wants to do something different. So that's that element. And to kind of conflate it with the other element, we'll remind you that the deputy clerk was also something that has been previously agreed. This is just nailing down some of the detail. And I will remind you that I have said that I will not be here forever. And when I say forever, I mean probably 18 months at maximum, and then you will be looking for a new clerk. So again, that's part of what this process was also in mind to do.
Yes. Simon, did you?
That's okay, I'll just be repeating.
Okay, so back to the recommendation from the staffing committee was the job evaluation HR review process to include organisational wide staff and council functions to be commissioned up to within a maximum budget of £8,000. So I propose that recommendation.
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favour then, please. Okay, and all those against? And all those abstaining? 2. Thank you, everybody. Okay, and another one from the staffing committee about the deputy town clerk post be graded in line with the manager posts. Sorry, yes.
I propose that we accept the staffing committee's suggestion of where they would be graded.
Second that.
Okay, so all those in favour? Okay, and against? And abstain?
I don't know enough about it.
Yeah, sorry, I don't feel we actually understood what that meant. Sorry, I should have set them.
That was fine to do that.
Shuffling that one up, yes, so yes, reshuffle moment, because Rob Ulick, hello, very kindly has joined us in case anyone's got any questions on number 12, so I'd like to slot that item in now, if I may. So, number 12 is to consider the request from Bude Climate Partnership for the Town Council to become a member of its newly established CIC.
If I just give a very quick overview, because the council already is a member of the partnership, Bude Climate Partnership, and joined recently. Since then, the partnership has moved on its status.
It was already a CIC,
Right.
but the CIC was the trading entity of it, and now we're moving over entirely to the CIC.
Thank you, Rob. That's where we need Rob here for the detail. Now we have been invited to become actually a member of the CIC in accordance with its new government structure, covering the whole of the business, and that allows it to, I understand, to control its own destiny and finances and not rely on a third-party CIC that up until now has been taking that function. So it makes it a lot neater. I think it's probably the main purpose. I've looked into this from our point of view. I mean, it's a community interest company limited by a guarantee. The guarantee is £1, so I don't think it gives the council any undue obligations. I have checked through Calc and Malkin that a town council can be a member of a CIC, so we are legally able to do that as a body with the power of competence that the council has. It would be different if we wanted to appoint a director, because a director would have to be a named person, not a corporate body. So that's the background I can give you. I don't know, Rob, but it's still...
Do you want me to say something? Yes, so we're currently in the process, imminently, of submitting an application to the lottery for further funding. We've got through all the stages so far, and this is the final stage. When we originally got our funding from the lottery, we had a lead partner, which was BCCT, Bude Coastal Community Team, and it put an awful lot of a burden really on that one partner to have the total responsibility. It also made the partnership less resilient than it could be, because if anything had happened to BCCT on its own, the whole thing would have collapsed. So the idea of forming the CIC was so that the partnership then became a trading entity in itself. And a CIC is a community interest company, so it's non-profit making, and it exists to benefit the community. And if anything happens to it and it dissolves with liabilities, the members are liable up to £1. If there are assets, it goes to the asset lot, which has been chosen for the moment to be Transition Bude, but could be any other organisation in Bude that the members choose. So currently, of the 7 founding partners, 5 of them are members and 3 of those are directors. Of the other 2 who aren't partners, one isn't because they're already a member of another CIC that gets funding from the lottery and the same thing. And the other organisation said, can we just not think about it now? And they are now thinking about it. And I don't want to sort of preempt anything, but it looks likely that they'll also become a member. So it's moving everything onto that footing. We also have new partners, of which the Town Council is one, the Tourist Board is one, Friends of Bude-Stratton, various other organisations. 4 of those have already agreed to join the CIC as well as be partners. One other is likely to. 3 are deciding at the moment, of which the Town Council is one. So that's where we are. Does it matter if the Town Council is not? Not entirely, but it strengthens this application. There is one project that we're proposing, we've spoken about beforehand, that the Town Council will be directly involved in, and that's the energy project, which is to employ an energy advisor with another partner, Community Energy Plus, who are based in Truro, and this project will help people in residents of Bude make their homes more energy efficient so that they can heat it with less energy, less cost. And we then hope to access funding from the Energy Redress Scheme, which is run by Ofgem. And I'm sitting here actually with the map of it, where they've given funding. And if you look at it, there's Barnstable and Bideford. There's a sort of big circle that goes around Bude. Barnstable, Bideford, Oakhampton, Totnes, Plymouth, Liscar, Truro. Absolutely no funding in North Cornwall. In fact, anywhere on the north coast of Cornwall. And generally these organisations have got round about £100,000 per year in order to help their residents reduce their energy bills. And the reason why they have done is because they've come together in organisations such as this, working with CICs, councils, community organisations, environmental organisations, voluntary organisations, whoever, because the more people that you bring, more organisations that you bring together, the greater credibility you have, the more you're trusted, and so that's really what it's about. So from our point of view, having the Town Council as a member strengthens it. Town Council is an organisation that's not going to disappear. It handles, well we hope, it handles a budget of 1.3 million. You know, all these things just add to the confidence in our organisation in getting this funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Any questions? Yes, Kevin.
Yeah, I get kind of what's in it for you. What's in it for the Town Council?
Well, that you will be helping the local residents gain funding.
So there's a funding stream we can tap into through this CIC that couldn't be available otherwise.
Yes. So for this particular, so the energy redress funding, there are 3 streams available. One of which has existed since 2018 and 2 which have just come online. The 2018 one, and it's the main one, is for energy vulnerability. And because of the whole CNA's peripherality, every resident of Bude qualifies as energy vulnerable. And also because of the characteristics that less than half of homes have central heating, we have much higher percentage of homes having oil or coal heated, and also we've got the highest rural child poverty, and we are the most isolated. So all these factors play into that energy vulnerability.
And it's easier for us to tap in that funding through you guys than it is to tap into that funding through anybody else.
So
pre-existing.
Yes. So what we're doing for that particular project is working together with Neatside, Bude-Stratton Community Project, who will be the lead partner for that, because you need a charity to apply for it. We're not a charity. The reason why we're working together under this umbrella of Bude Climate Partnership is communities such as ours. I mean, one of the reasons why Bude has struggled to get funding, like other communities such as ours, is all the individual organisations are too small. And they look at it and they say, this is a 2 or 3 person operation. You've got an annual income of £45,000 a year. You know, it doesn't. You don't have the heft that gives these funding organisations the confidence. So
And
bring
it's
them all together.
Forgive me, because I'm late to the party on these things.
Yeah.
But
All the money
there's-
will be
there's-
going to local
there's
residents.
no, I'm not
Yeah.
sort of saying
Yeah.
name your competitors.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sort of say if you're Tesco, name Sainsbury's and Summerfield or whatever. But there's nobody else. There's nobody else out there
No.
that we could use. It's either use you or we're walking away from a lot of this grant funding. Is that kind of where we're at?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes, Katie?
Yeah, I just, the document that we had in with this was really useful, but I guess it'd be great to understand from like a staffing perspective. I've got a rough idea that you probably have to go to like stakeholder meetings, or someone will have to go to stakeholder meetings, probably. Yeah, and then things like, and there's things to sign off as well, and then I don't know if there's any obligations into extra like things that we have to do for tax here as well that we have to do. Basically, do you, as a finance person, do you foresee there being any extra responsibilities on our side other than obviously the £1 we might have to pay default?
No, there's not in pure being a member. And this is again, if the partnership is doing something which it wishes the council to be more directly involved with and to commit resources with, that will be a decision of the council at the time. So each scheme or whatever would come forward. Just being a member doesn't commit us to, as a council, to doing something that the partnership itself decides that the council may not want to do. There's always the basis of partnerships that we enter into, but ultimately the council resources have to be of the control of the council.
So it wasn't. So there's nothing more on like when you're doing your reports to HMRC and stuff. There's nothing really extra.
No, we don't. We're not making any payments to to the CIC. They're not giving us any dividend or anything back in income our way, so it doesn't affect our finances in that respect.
Cool. Yes.
Can I propose that we, I'll move this forward, adopt this request and accept the request. And
So to become a member of its newly established CIC. So I'll second that. So all those in favour of becoming a member of its CIC? Okay, thank you. And thank you, Rob.
Thank you very much.
Being on hand. Okay, thank you, everybody. Right, back to the order. Number 5, correspondence received.
There's two that I was going to highlight. One was just to say there were a number of letters and emails of objection to the drag queen event at the library. They were responded to, inform them of the actual nature of the event and it was age appropriate. So I'll stay on that matter. And then there's something from...
Yeah, so we had Harry Pearce. I don't know how many of you might know. He was a teacher at Bude-Stratton Community School and he was the man behind the Poppy Wave a couple of years ago up on Shoulder Hill. And he sent us, he was wanting to come tonight to give you a talk himself, but he couldn't be here, so he's sent us a video, Cal. And he's provided these. Was there enough? Did you get? Oh yeah, they're down there, that's fine. I think he refers to the numbering on the map.
Good evening. My name's Harry Pearce. I'm an English and drama teacher at Bude-Stratton School, and I just wanted to share some time with you to explain about an exciting opportunity for Bude that's happening. So it's a collaboration between Bude-Stratton School, the Sea Pool, primary schools, and then also lots of other small pockets of local community groups. So 4 years ago, the Poppy Wave happened, and it's been developing and getting more commemorative and beautiful each and every time. Then there was the Bude and Social History Project run by Claire Roberts, and now we have Bude's very own community play that will be happening at the Sea Pool. Now, I'm sorry I can't be there tonight to explain in person, but I just wanted to share some information about this project so you get a feel for it. Now, here's a character from Bude's past. This is Stephen Henry Bromhead, who was in Bude during the First World War. And what he did was he was part of a crew in an airship, because of course airships were used to patrol the coast and keep us safe. Now, Stephen Henry Bromhead, he was an amazing character, because what he did, he was asked if he could go to Bristol with his crew and look after a steamer going up the Bristol Channel. Now, he agreed to it, but he said to his crew, look, first we're going to go to Marham Church, and then when we get there we're going to pause, and then I'm going to drop a letter wrapped round a stone into my sweetheart's garden, because I want to tell her that I'm going to be late for our date. Now, that's just one story. The community play that will be created and devised by the community will tell many stories about our past. Indeed, there's the Bude Heritage Bude at War Trail, which I am desperate for young people and the community to know about. I want every class in the primary school and in the secondary school to walk the trail, and then they will know exactly what happened to Bude in the First World War and Second World War. It is vital. And so our play then will switch between the past, what a beautiful postcard that is, and the present, an amazing image that you can buy on a postcard down at the sea pool. Now, I can use this image then to hopefully explain how our performance will work, and I think you might have a piece of paper there with a diagram on it. So number one is where our audience will be sat. It is the perfect venue because it is just like North Cornwall's version of the Minack Theatre. It is a natural amphitheatre and a beautiful place to celebrate Bude's community. Number two is where we are going to place a stage over part of the sea pool, enough space so that we can tell our story. And number three, a stage out there in the water. That is where we might have the Bencoolen Wreckers singing shanty songs that celebrate our past. Number four is there by the washing machine, where we might have the primary school pupils walking up and standing on that edge and singing Harry Glasson's Cornwall My Home. He's given his permission. Also, we're involving other community groups like Bude, Choral Society, and other individuals. It's such an exciting event, I can't tell you. I've just labelled there number 5 and 6 because I'm going to be asking Cornwall County Council to cordon off that area so that we can protect our playing space and so that the performance can be so memorable. There is a moment in that performance where it is envisaged that an airship will fly over the audience's head and take us right back to 1914. I hope the Town Council will be behind this project. It is so exciting. Everybody I speak to just cannot wait for it to happen. Thank you for your time and consideration. I look forward to speaking to you in person about it. Take care. God, Bude's a special place, isn't it?
So when you first described it to me, I thought, goodness, what? You know, because he was talking about a stage over the sea pool and this airship, but it sounds very exciting, I think. But yeah, just wanted to share that with you. Okay, that was it, wasn't it? Yeah. Okay. On to my bit. Okay, just a couple of bits from me actually, for my mayor's part, and it was just to say that I recently took a trip over to Holmesworthy for their Pretty Maid ceremony, invited by Mayor Helen Parker over there. Very traditional ceremony indeed, dating back to the 1840s, and young Tegan, who we met when we went over there, she works actually in the council offices, took the title for this coming year, which was lovely. An election has been called for Stratton Ward, and we're still sort of waiting on dates to be confirmed for that one. And I was just going to briefly mention a couple of things that I've donated to out of the Mayor's Fund, just to go over those. And there was one which I made to the Neat Side for the Bude-Stratton Community Project, which was their pop-up cafe, which is run by the local young people, and it's popped up in various locations over the last few months, hasn't it, I think, giving them some sort of valuable autonomy and experience, really good I think they're carrying it on, aren't they, Sean? Because you were at the meetings, weren't you?
I was at the meetings, but I've not been at the meetings for a while.
No,
So
I
don't know
can
if
see.
anyone else that knows
I think
about
they're
it.
sort of, Jamie would be, Jamie's very involved,
Yeah.
isn't he? But not here this evening. But lots of good stuff going on there. And the other was to another local project called Pathways of Discovery, which I think I mentioned at the last council meeting actually. And that's moving on really well. I've seen lots more being posted. I think you might have seen it actually, because I think you've commented. Nick Cole has been posting about it on Nostalgic Bude. But it will aim to provide lots of local history and walks, basically. Join the two things together, so points of interest locally and walking, so all good. And I think that was it from me. Not too much, you'll be pleased. So, an opportunity for Cornwall councillors present to discuss Cornwall council issues relevant to the STC.
You go first, Sean. Make a change. Thank you, Peter.
Right. Yeah, the first event that I attended on behalf of Cornwall Council was the Devon and Cornwall Police Crime Panel meeting, which was on the 9th of July at Plymouth. Why we can't share it here, I don't know. Anyway, the Police Commissioner, Alison Hernandez, gave us a basic report on her annual report, which is in draft form, which has been circulated to members of the crime panel for their comments, which has to be back in for the end of this month so that it can be released in September. It covers a multitude of sins with regards to the police operations. Yeah, the police, well, Alison Hernandez was asked that all incidents should be reported to her office with regards to the Vision Zero partnership that's running with Cornwall Council. They've appointed a coordinator called Natalie War, that's W-A-R-R. Now they want to know about all antisocial behaviour, especially noise nuisance involving motorcycles and cars and that sort of thing. Because they're looking at, you know, we've got speed cameras. They're looking at this new technology of noise cameras, which will help them to prosecute individuals that are causing problems with taking their baffles out of their motorcycles and some of these sports cars that have got very loud exhausts that do donuts in the street, all that sort of thing. So that's something they're looking at. She's been working hard with government to make sure that we get as much of the shared prosperity levelling up monies from the government for dealing with local crime prevention in particular. There seems to be a big issue with regards to hate crime, especially in the larger towns, not so much in Cornwall but in Devon in particular, amongst our ethnic minority members of the community and our LGBT community. She's going to be appointing a non-executive director in a few weeks to head up a specialist team to look into those issues in particular. I raised the issue with regards to community policing, i.e. neighbourhood policing, which we've only got 2 officers, which we share with Launceston. She suggested that I take that up with the new Chief Constable when he's in place and point out what we really need as a community in terms of neighbourhood policing. The money is there, it's just finding the right bodies to fill the positions. The Drugs County Line activities that's been in association with Merseyside Police in this particular area. It's been very successful. They're arresting ringleaders in particular with the dealing of drugs which are exploiting our youngsters in this part of Cornwall. Bit of good news when it comes to drugs. There's a local operation called Scorpion earlier in the month, which was carried at Bude-Stratton School, where they took a drugs dog around all the school, sniffed all the kids, all the bags. Another thing was found, which was great news. Which we were expecting. I don't know about staff, but children were clean, so that's really, really encouraging. You've probably heard about Bude Police Station reopening on the 22nd of November. That's going to be Monday to Saturday from 10 till 3. Unfortunately, it's going to be a civilian there, not a police officer, but they will be there to help best way they can, correct you in the right way, whatever your issues are. But please remember the blue phone that's on the outside of the police station. If you've got an issue, pick that up and they'll take you direct to the operations team to get you out as soon as possible. Last week I went to the Holsworthy Rural Transport Committee meeting where they were telling us about all the good that they do, but obviously they're suffering, like most organisations, with a shortfall of money. We're not talking a few thousand, we're talking tens of thousands. They operate a car service taking people to and from doctor's surgeries or hospitals. They also have got minibus services which help with local organisations such as judo clubs, football clubs and that sort of thing, which helps with the zero carbon. Rather than all the parents taking their kids to these events, they use the minibuses. It appears that most of the parish and town councils in the Devon area are subscribing around about £500 a year to this organisation. Some of the car journeys they are actually paid for. I can't remember how much the fee is, but it's negligible. But what they're looking for is more support from this side of the border, because it's surprising how many people, we're probably the third, Bude-Stratton, probably the third out of the whole of the area that they cover in terms of number of people they support. Go as far as Marmon Church, Widmouth Bay, so it's quite a large area, even though it's just across the border. I've spoken with the Philip's Desmond, we saw him yesterday, and asked him about some support from Cornwall Council to help them out. Unfortunately, the local authorities over the border, they have all responsibility for their own bus services. It's not controlled by one central organisation. So some of them can afford it to help, some can't. So that's something that we will try and help through Cornwall. I'm not sure whether or not you as a town council may consider that, but I'll pass on to the clerk the information that I can give them so that you may consider it day to day if you feel you can help. But there are a lot of people from this area that do use the service. I think that's about it. Oh, apart from the Shared Prosperity Fund, everybody knows about that, yeah? I'll send on to the clerk I don't know if you've got the link where you can actually apply. Basically, it's a basic form, the organisation, what your project is, and a little bit of detail. It's not too intensive in terms of the information they require. Once that's sent off, they will analyse it and come back and ask you for some more detailed questions. But one that we're looking at in Morningstar is for a mug up one of these multi-games surface areas, hard surface areas, but Morningstar we've only got grass, so we're looking for a multi-purpose surface area, which that's the sort of thing you can actually apply for. So if you've got some projects, I'm sure Peter's got some in line for Bude, then please apply for that. I think Peter, if you want to continue with what's...
Unless anybody's got any questions for you.
Yeah, sure, sorry.
One. Have you got anywhere with my request about the land behind Morrison's and the information I was asking you to gather? As in what they're doing with it and when they're going to potentially...
This is with regards to the...
well, there's several organisations, but yeah, the boxing club are quite keen.
Right, I was going to talk about that.
Yeah, if you can, because Peter knows a bit more about it. This is to do with the Cabana side as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
So Peter will update you.
Obviously, I was going to leave the scouts to you, but we both know what yeah.
Thank
Right,
you, Sean.
Thank you. Oh, with regards to the item 10,
Yeah.
I've got a brief statement that may
Yeah.
explain a little bit before you go.
Sure, yeah, no,
discussion.
I've got that written
Okay.
down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Peter.
Right, thanks. So, like yourself, I'm going to go slightly out of order because I'll deal with the question that you raised about the Scout site and the land at Kavanagh Home. So, the Kavanagh Home site, which is astonishingly large and a lot bigger than probably most people realise, because the entrance is off the Great Cormac roundabout on the A39, but it stretches all the way down to effectively the car park at Stratton Primary School. But equally, it then fills up the land all the way to the back of Morrison's. So it's a massive development. Make no mistake, it's being delivered over a 3 or 4 year, well, probably 4 or 5 year period by the time they've delivered the two separate distinct phases they intend to deliver. I really got incredibly upset just over a year ago with Kavanagh because they stopped up and effectively ripped up and built over the old Pathfields route, the footpath. Which is, in my opinion, of some extremely historic significance to Bude, because it was, again, historically the link that pedestrians would have used between Stratton and the coast. And probably in the very early part of Bude's formation, when Bude effectively wasn't anything much more than an opportunity for people to get out and do some fishing, it would have been the route that people would have taken from Stratton and back. But anyway, that was treated, in my opinion, in a roughshod way by Kavanagh. I made my investigations at Cornwall Council, and it turned out that it was a box-ticking exercise that they could stop up the pathway, and somebody in an office in Truro just merely rubber-stamped it, and the maximum they can apply for is, I think, an 18-month stoppage period, but I know already that they will automatically reapply when that 18 months is up. So the original Pathfield route will be closed for the entirety of the probably 5-year development period, and when it comes back, it won't look anything like it did, and the millstone has been re-sited. Anyone who did cross-country at Stratton School, Mr. Oakby, will probably remember very well running past that stone. So I don't have a whole lot of warmth for Kavanagh, I'm afraid, and that's the starting point, because, in answer to your question, there was a Section 106 agreement as part of a planning application, and they had to provide a significantly large plot of land for community use. And the way in which this works is they enter into negotiations with Cornwall Council, who will find local community users to occupy this land, and they'll sign a contract, and effectively the land will get taken on by local groups. I was working very closely with the Scouts, who wanted to move their opportunity from Coast View, which is not yet developed, to that new site at Kavanagh. They were in negotiations with Kavanagh. Kavanagh had asked them if they could use that site temporarily for their works compound. They agreed to that, which effectively delayed their project by a year or so. But about 2 weeks ago, I was contacted by the Scout leader who was very upset because Kavanagh have got a legal employee who's realised that Cornwall Council have effectively timed out on their negotiations, and they've withdrawn, as they're legally entitled to do, that community land. And I think they intend to now build on it, build houses on it. So any residual warmth I had for Kavanagh and developers is now gone completely. I've gone below freezing on them. And Sean and I had a meeting on the 27th of July with Scott Mann, because we both felt that we needed to bring the heaviest guns we probably possibly could into this. And Scott Mann's office is, I think, in the process of contacting them. I think that effectively we need to tell them, or we need to be bloody awkward.
Yeah, well, Scott phoned me yesterday before our meeting with Philip, and I said that we were tied up because we were going to try and expand on that piece of the camera. So he was asking how things were going, so we need to get back to him on that.
Right. So in answer to your question, it's not going very well. Right, and we're bringing in the biggest guns we possibly get to point the cannons at them. But anyway, the story at the moment is not very good.
No, well,
Yeah, I'll just say that this is not unusual on these big developments, and that's one of the reasons why I stood for council, because of those situations are going awry.
Well, that's why I bumped it straight up and changed the unit.
It doesn't seem, sorry Peter, there doesn't seem to be anybody that's policing this side of things.
No, they promised the Scouts.
The planning conditions, and the 106 and the seal payments, there doesn't seem to be anybody that's policing those to make sure what Peter's described happens. Sorry, Peter.
Yeah, but anyway, if you get an opportunity to go and be nasty to Cabinet Managing Director, do it. Right, so Tuesday the 9th of July, I was down in Truro for an economic growth and development meeting. We were setting out in large part the work process, or the work that we're going to adopt over the next 12 to 18 months. And one of the interesting things that I'm going to hope to engage with is the way that Cornwall Council reflects to tourism in Cornwall. And it's a shame Rob Ewley's left, because he's doing a very big piece of work with Bude Climate Partnership in terms of trying to make tourism to Bude specifically as environmentally sound as it possibly can be by engaging all of the tourism providers in the area. He's working very closely with Bude Area Tourist Board, also known as the Tourist Information Centre, to deliver that project, and that's the next phase of PCP project, as I understand. So that's really interesting, and I think that work could go hand in glove with something that's going to go on in a committee room in Cornwall and Council at Truro over the next 18 months or so. Tuesday the 26th, we had the Environment Agency down. Some of us were there. Sean was definitely there. I can't remember. Paul was definitely there. And we walked along the wall, effectively from Nanningwells Bridge that leads up towards the Masonic Lodge. That wall is deemed to be in a failing state, and it's also thought that because it has an outer facing on that faces into the river bed, but this side of that facing is effectively just sand, that if we do have a very serious overtopping event, that it could wash out all the fine material in that bank. So the Environment Agency are very keen to reinforce that bank. They've got funding to do it. The treatment and design that they had proposed to do I was uncomfortable with, because effectively they want to put a pressed concrete tiling or pressed concrete stone effect all the way along, approximately 4 foot high, and iron pilings behind. We'd had also representations from members of the public about some of the environmental treatment, because there's got some very historic shrubbery in there. We've done our absolute best to make all the representations as hard as we can to the Environment Agency. We did manage to get some concessions from them by twisting them as hard as we possibly could, and I think those concessions are good, and it's as much as we could hope for. There will be some natural stone coming from Nanningwells Bridge into Oakview Gabarique Way. The very first parking bay that we have adjacent to the bridge, I'd like the council to consider taking that away, because it would make, for a number of reasons, but at the moment there's often big vans parked there, and from a visual line it sort of destroys the impact of the historic area, especially Nanningwells Bridge. But also it'll make the area much better for pedestrians to be able to move around, because it's a particularly tricky corner with the traffic going to neat side and pedestrians all intermixing. There is other work planned there, but if we can lose that first parking space, that would be a real help to that project. Other concessions were they're going to try and get some planting at the base of the wall, which they're building. They're also going to have a treatment on it. It might be something as simple as yoghurt, but to weather it down so it's not bright coloured, light concrete, and they might even be able to colour it for us. And they're also going to do some very well thought out planting in the bank behind to try and make sure that it's native species there, because there are some non-native species which are in that bank at the moment. If you're really keen on that area, you might have noticed, I don't know if they're still there or not, but they certainly were when we visited, there are some square pads lying on top of the bank, because there are slow worms on that site, and they're going to be relocating the slow worms to a safe place. And those pads are effectively heat pads, so they get hot in the day, the slow worms like to go underneath them, and then they can capture them and move them safely. Okay, Thursday the 28th, change the subject now. I've spoken to you before about the breakwater and the leaks in Tommy's pit. The breakwater was damaged quite significantly in Storm Eunice, and this didn't actually come to light till several weeks after the event. I think it was several weeks after that that the damage to Tommy's pit and the fact that it was not able to hold water at low tide became evident as well. So I've been working with the Harbour Master and the Maritime Manager to try to get some work committed to repair this. The Maritime Manager is reluctant to, and the reason why is he believes that the breakwater is a flood defence asset, and as such it should be funded by the Environment Agency. The Environment Agency say it's a harbour's asset and it's nothing to do with us. So there is a big argument brewing at the moment, and the Harbour Master, sorry not the Harbour Master, the Maritime Manager has told me already that he wants to, not wants to decommission, he's considering decommissioning Bude as a harbour, in order for him not to have to take the responsibility or the financial responsibility of the breakwater, which in turn then would fall to the Environment Agency. So I'm keeping a very close eye on that, and I'm deeply unhappy with the direction of travel that he's proposing. We have got a package of works of somewhere near £100,000 to do repairs to the breakwater. Effectively, it will be pumped with a very loose concrete or grout to repair the voids where the fines have been taken out of it due to water action, and where possible all the stonework will be replaced. And Tommy's Pit, I'm told, and they used really weasel words of this, which again I'm unhappy with, because I want Tommy's Pit to be secured and full up of water again. And I've been trying to put the thumb screws and make sure this is going to happen. The words that they've used with me is Tommy's Pit is within the scope of the works. Right, and when I've tried to investigate what they actually mean by that, they have said that they've got the budget for the machinery, the men and the materials to come onto site, but they don't know the extent of the damage until they actually start working. So if they use up all of their budget repairing the breakwater, and they haven't got enough left to repair Tommy's Pit, it will be prioritised on the breakwater. So already I can see a danger that Tommy's Pit won't be repaired. Now I spoke, so I'll come to you, Mr. James, in a second. I spoke to Harbour Master this evening, just before I came to the meeting, just to see if there's any update or anything I could bring to you. He said that there are workmen due on site on Monday, and he's reasonably convinced that Tommy's Pit will be repaired. So I might be causing undue worry, but I just want to flag that up as an issue. Well, I've got lots of other things on my list, but Mr. James, you have a question.
I told that woman when they come up here from the council before, if they'd have sorted it out when it first happened, it wouldn't have cost anything like it's going to cost now.
Yeah.
It's Cornwall Council's fault or whatever it is, because they've waited and waited and waited.
I
It
agree.
could have been fixed months ago when it first happened.
I agree.
And it would have cost nothing like it's going to cost now.
When it first came to light, I spoke to a gentleman called Mike Vanstone, not the Mike Vanstone of Vanstone Blind Hire, but the ex-council employee, ex-harbour master, and he said that he used to have a team of, I think, of 6 men that were under his management, and they had a pile of slate on the end of the by Ocean Caves, and they would inspect the breakwater at least once or twice a week, and they would repair it on an ongoing basis, but there just simply isn't the budget to do that.
When Tommy's Pit doesn't come, that's going to basically ruin the breakwater because it's part of joins it all together.
I agree. I agree. That's. I mean, I will do my absolute best to
Yeah,
ensure.
sure.
Yeah, you can't differentiate, you can't say the breakwater stops and Tommy's Pit starts. Tommy's Pit is part of the breakwater.
That's the point that Harbour must have made this evening. Mr. Jordan.
This is a matter of interest. If a canal company originally had built the breakwater according to what James Green had said, you would never have been able to go beyond. See, at the moment you've got two chapel rocks. When James Green surveyed it, that was a huge, massive rock, and he wanted to build the breakwater from the land to Chapel Rock. Because it was huge, it's an enormous kind of thing. If you go back in history, people who visited Bude in the Middle Ages and such like refer to it like an island. So I know it doesn't make any difference today, but what I'm saying is the only way that got breached was that James Green was persuaded, maybe with money, that it would be a good idea. Because if they hadn't have breached that, you would never have the breakwater going beyond, and they built it too big and of the wrong dimensions, it's too upright and all that stuff. They would never have been able to have got to build Tommy's Pit. It makes no difference to where you are.
Thank you for that bit of history. It was wonderful. There is a notice pinned to Chapel Rock there, which says, and I'll read it. It says, Cornwall Council are engaging with suitable contractors to effect this repair as soon as possible. That's a new sign on up on the rock.
Starting Monday.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, but it's advising people not to go down.
I think that's the best they can do, because it potentially is dangerous. I mean, it's a bit like,
That's what I'm saying. Moving on.
Right, so moving on, yesterday we had Phil Desmond, who's the Cornwall Council councillor. He's the portfolio holder for transport, and we had an afternoon meeting with him, which I personally think was very successful. There was a lot of ground covered. I had a one-to-one session with him and his team, and we did a walk around. I showed him the pinch points that I'm most concerned about in the town centre area. We looked at the mini roundabout, we looked at the lack of crossing across to the Bengaluru Play Park, we walked along the Strand, we looked at the location of the bus stop, we looked at all the traffic that was circulating in that area, we looked at the access issues for some of these car park, and then we went on to look at some of these car park itself, and then we came back into one of the rooms in the Parkhouse Centre. Councillor Good joined us and had the opportunity to have half an hour to present everything that she's been working on to the portfolio holder, and then after that we had Connect Bude have a 30-minute opportunity to come and talk to the team about their desires. And there's a whole number of issues, but I think from my point of view, the most overwhelming issue that Connect Bude want is to make sure that we've got a much better and sensible connection to the train service at Oakham. So Tavistock have got a connection bus, and I think I'm going to be promoting and working to try and provide a Bude, Holsworthy, Holwell express service to the Oakhampton station. That's what I think, something which I'd like to really try to adopt and support, and I think Connect Bude would really support that as well.
Also, you got to support 3 other Cornwall councillors at that meeting.
Yes, yeah, and Cornwall councillors as well. I just want to say a quick couple of words about the food bank site. Originally, Cornwall Council made a bit of a muck up with it because they just were going to award a tender to one organisation, but then they suddenly realised that perhaps it ought to be opened wider to other community organisations. That was done. I had 8 very worthy local organisations contact me personally for the application pack for the tender, and so that's 8 that I'm aware of, but there could well have been another 8 that perhaps didn't even contact me, that just went straight onto the Cornwall Council website and got hold of those application tender papers. So that has had a much better airing and a much wider opportunity for local groups to put their bid forward. And I'm told that the selection process for that particular asset does focus very, very heavily on community value. So Cornwall Council will be looking at what value added the organisations themselves are actually providing as part of their offer. So I'm looking forward to see who actually gets that, and looking forward to seeing that community asset back in use again. Final one, I had an email just this evening before we arrived, and it was a reminder from the land team and the legal team at Cornwall Council that we had expressed an interest in a tiny plot of land that Cornwall Council owns in Stratton. And it's where, if you're driving through Stratton and you pass the old Marshall's garage site on the corner, there's an old pumping station. It looks like a little roof with a couple of benches on. That is all redundant machinery, and the site for that goes right up to the house that abuts it. There's room there, in my opinion, for a little micro house, although like a 1 or 2 bedroom flat could be built, and it's something which we could do as part of our community land trust aspirations. And I know that those were partially on hold, awaiting the results of our housing survey, which is just completed. I'm sure somebody else will talk about that in this meeting. So just a reminder that that is coming up, and I've asked them for a stay of execution on actually getting rid of that until we know where we're going and we've got a better direction.
So is that the South West Water?
Yes.
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. Right. And that's it. Any questions? I'm happy to take.
Yeah, it was about the your food bank building. Is there actually any other council, like Cornwall Council owned buildings that they do similar things in Bude, or is that the only one? Do you know of any others?
The Seapool use their own toilet block, which belongs to them.
There will be, but I can't off the top of my head remember what they are.
Yeah,
but like I say, the Seapool repurposed what was a toilet block.
Yeah. I guess it'd be great to have like an opportunity, just like a map to be able to give out to, like, when opportunities like this come up.
Yeah.
Just so that, you know, potential like community groups can plan in the future, maybe if there might be a tender that comes up somewhere else or something. Like it's just so that, I mean, even for me as a councillor, to be able to know which buildings around town are actually...
What you're trying to describe is part of a process that we started on, and it sort of hiccuped, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
There isn't that.
dare I say it, around the pandemic, and the process is called devolution. So the idea is that Cornwall Council holds a whole bunch of assets, bits of land and stuff that it probably doesn't really want everywhere, all throughout Cornwall. And it wants parish and town councils to take those things on. And we've done quite a bit of that in terms of we've taken on the library, we've taken on responsibility for the toilets, and I can see that there will be other things that will probably happen in time. But there are maps available. I mean, I think you can access it as a non-Cornwall councillor, as a Cornwall council mapping system, and you can highlight all the council-owned properties in the area. But we as a council probably do need to sit down and have that conversation again in terms of devolution of assets and what our appetite would be to take those further assets and little pieces of land on.
On a PRI, I doubt if there's that much, to be honest. Because I can relate to the assets of North Cornwall District Council that passed Cornwall Council, and there weren't that many. And of those, most of them were toilets. And then there's obviously car parks. There's the Dep Park at Kings Hill and some units associated with that. But in terms of shops, buildings, little parcels of land, North Cornwall District Council didn't have much imbued like that. And to the best of my knowledge, before Cornwall County Council didn't have much. There might be little sections of grass that gets cut or something like that, but buildings are doubt.
They would probably quite like us to own the canal.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I wouldn't suggest we should give it too much thought.
Or if we had every penny of council tax and all the revenue off the cop.
Well done.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you, Peter. Okay. On to any key issues from lead councillors. Can I just remind everybody just to stick their hand up if they want to speak, just so I can address you individually. Thank you. So, any lead councillors got any issues? Yes, Kitty.
So, quick update about the Sainsbury's bus stop. We have a date. So, 19th September, 4 days of work. I don't know how much, well, the road is going to be closed during that time. But that's on, like, all sort of plans, you know, trying to be executed now. So, 19th September, we should have a new bus stop and also a bit more path around that little bit. The Bush speed limit changes, that's going to autumn consultation, and hopefully, if everyone's happy with the speed limit changes, early 2023 implementation. And then the other interesting ones, so generally I had a meeting where I talked with Chris of the community network officer and Oliver Jones, and basically just showing them through the task list of like all the issues that we've got around the town, explaining some of them, seeing whatever information that we can find, and then trying to like assign them to different pots of money that they have on their side and different responsibilities. So for example, the one stage when you talk about really long-term planning, when you talk about cycle routes through town, pedestrianising, that's come up occasionally, like obviously the back routes through Bude itself are a complete mess, massive potholes, like if you want to cycle through the top of town, you basically have to go against the one-way system, or you cycle through all these potholes on these back streets. So I've highlighted that, and actually that should be going towards their maintenance team now at Cornwall Council. So hopefully all those back streets will get done, which means all the residents there be able to actually get down there without ruining their suspension. People will be able to start to walk down there, and that should hopefully start to think about, well, how could that free up the rest of town, and how that could affect it. So there's like lots of knock-on things. So yeah, that's, and then the other one that I should probably highlight, because lots of people in the immediate area have highlighted an issue around Epford Farm and the campsite, which is that road is basically the one that connects us to Widmouth up from the Falcon. Basically, like everyone is asking for just a little extra extension of double yellows because they can't get in and out of a private road. It's a thing of obviously like there's been new housing developments down that road, but no one's necessarily thought about potential changes that might mean to, you know, increase the amount of uses of that road and things like that. And also my general talking to people of Stratton, has been quite successful, where really, ultimately, Cornwall Council and Cormac were really interested in the fact that because we're now opening the toilets, and because there might be changes to where like the shop is and generally footfall now around Stratton, they're much more interested in potentially putting in a crossing at Stratton or something similar. So they're open to, not necessarily ideas, but they're basically, it's going to be going onto their radar, but we need to inform them, basically, like, you know, is there changes that's happening if people are walking around, like, because now they know that the toilets are opening, now that know that people want to cross the road, whereas before they didn't know that anyone wanted to cross the road. Okay, sure. So yeah, that's worth thinking about. And then that meeting yesterday was very productive, finally, because I think the main highlight to take away is the importance of explaining the economic argument for improving connectivity in Bude. Like that would seem to be like almost his number one thing is like, what is the economic benefit to this town? What? And so anecdotes, in fact he specifically asked for anecdotes from my business, so that's something that I think I've been trying to figure out how I could potentially help with Cal or something to try and communicate out. If that's the thing that they want us to do, is try and get anecdotes from businesses and around the town about how an improved connection would work, you know, if that's bus or train or whatever, then we can, you know, try and we can do that. So, but yeah, that's everything.
Cool. Thanks, Katie. Okay, anybody else? Yes, Peter.
I know I've had an awful lot of time, and I'm really conscious of that. But I am the council's representative on Bude Area Tourist Board, which I know I've mentioned previously. But there's a board meeting on the 21st of July, and I don't want to go through absolutely everything that was talked about, but what I do want to do is give you a flavour that Bude Area Tourist Board, under the management of Linda Winstanley, has got a real appetite to work with the town council and work with Bude to bring a series of events together. And I think there's a lot of energy that we can use to our best effect between obviously what Mark and his team are doing at the castle and what the guys over at the Tourist Information Centre are doing. And the closer that we can forge those links, the better. Okay, there's a whole lot of other stuff going on. I've had lots of time, so I won't bore you with it, but I might send an email out just with the main points on.
Cool. Thanks, Peter. Brilliant. Okay, if there's nothing from anybody else, we will go over to the public.
Yes.
Right.
Chris.
I'd like to make a comment about the police and crime commission set up.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, chief officers of police had full control of their force, everything that happened in it. The way they were controlled was with police committees, made up within whatever area they operated in, of all sorts of people. You could be elected, you didn't have to be a councillor, they were elected all sorts of people, right? And then suddenly somebody, and then the Metropolitan Police in the City of London, their controlling factor was a Home Secretary, right? So then there was something happened, and it was decided there wasn't accountability and all the rest of it. So they had the idea of having police and crime commissioners. So now we have them, and I don't suspect that they will disappear. If you consider what they actually cost, you have this fine lady, she speaks very well, I give her a due, she knows how to speak. She has a salary, but on top of that, she has a whole organisation, right? She has a chief executive, all sorts of office staff, a large premise in Exeter. So if you took the cost of that each year, which at a rough guess is probably nearly £2 million a year, and gave it to the chief officer of police, that would be several policemen that he probably could recruit each year. That's just an observation. I've always objected to it because, to me, it was a knee-jerk reaction to something that shouldn't have happened, and all they had to do was to change the legislation and make it more difficult. But give the chief officer more police, give the controlling body, the watch committee, often they would call more power to discipline the chief officer if need be. Now we've got this paraphernalia, which must cost a few absolute fortune to run. And so I'm not a fan of that, that's all I will say. That's what I think about it all anyway. So I think this gentleman's going to say something about the mayor for Cornwall. Well, that's a nonsense also. Purely because it may well be that if Cornwall had a mayor, it may well be that west of Bodmin, where there are a lot more people live, right? Where within Cornwall Council, I suspect a greater political power exists, that if the people there jumped up and down enough, the mayor for Cornwall could do them something. But as you know, we're remote up here. We have good councillors. It would make no difference to us. It would complete another waste of time. Hang on a minute. Well, item 11, I just think that's the right thing to do about the churches and all that stuff. In Stratton, it'll be good for the people of Stratton. You know, I know lots of people use it. I think I've even used it once. Only because I was in Stratton, but you know, I mean, it's a real benefit. So you know, I hope that works.
Thank you, Chris.
I've got one more. Next, it's item 18. It's the last one. Use Stratton Town Council representative. Now, it's down as Bude Valley Advisory Group. Now, unless it's been changed, its real its title should be Bude Valley Management Advisory Group. Right?
Apologies.
Yeah. So if it's a clerical error or a typo, someone's unfortunately left it out, we can't read, that's fine. But if the information you received that this was going to come be, it's actually Bude Valley Advisory Group, that would worry me, because it would reduce the effect that this group has. It's a really useful thing. You get to know. Usually they will tell you what they plan to do, what they're looking to do. They take the view, because all sorts of groups will go and attend it. And then there should be Cornwall. Once upon a time, Cornwall councillors had to chair it, but I don't think that exists anymore. So it is a useful group. You get to know what is going on, and if you think it's a good idea, you can make a comment and they'll press on. They probably may well do it anyway, but it is a useful thing, just to know what is going on. So if this is, like I say, if this item is actually Bude Valley Management Advisory Group, I'm less worried.
We just missed a word out
what's written on the agenda.
That's lovely. No, we noted that. Thank you, Chris.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I think their next meeting is the 22nd of September here, Thursday afternoon at 2 p.m. Do you not know that?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah. I take the minutes. I'm taking the minutes. So yeah.
Oh, you well, yes, that's right. I should be here. And hopefully there'll be some others of us.
Thank you, Chris. Did you have a question?
Yeah, no, I wanted to say something to say.
Oh.
I was waiting for Chris to finish, I didn't realise he had.
Is it all right? Peter, did you want to respond to
I
what Chris said there?
No, if it's okay,
No,
I
carry on.
Chris. I checked my emails. It is a typo, so I can confirm what Tracy has told you. It is BB Mag. And I also wanted to say that I'm pretty sure that I chaired every single BB Mag meeting for the last 5 years.
Well, you could have done, but we haven't had them for a while.
Okay. Mr. Jennings,
That
thank you.
performance yesterday, there outside the library, that was an absolute disgrace. You were there as the mayor of Bude,
Yes.
with all those bloody deviants and twice waving in the flag and cheering.
Mr.
No,
Jennings,
no.
no, we need to be very careful
There's
how
a
we
letter
talk
going
about
into
it
the
though,
paper very
please.
soon about the way you discriminate against everybody else in Bude but these people. You insulted the war debt, you had all the army military boys here a few meetings back kicking off because you wouldn't take their flag down. You insulted everybody. you took the Cornish flag down, you insulted the Cornish people, you discriminate against everybody. All you're interested in is that lot.
I'm sorry you
What
feel
you
like
try
that,
and
Mr.
turn
Jennings.
Bude
It's
into the
not
gay
case.
capital of Cornwall?
That's not true.
No, you see them, you should have been there yourself. They're bloody getting militant, all these blokes.
We were confronted by them.
Yeah, they're a disgrace, and she's encouraging it. She's there all the time,
Right.
supporting them.
Mr. Jennings, please.
The letter's going in the paper.
That's
we told.
absolutely fine. Thank you. Did anybody else want to? No. Okay, thank you very much. Swiftly moving on. Right, so number 10, to consider the situation of the possible establishment of a Mayor of Cornwall, the request of the Let Cornwall Decide campaign, and to determine any action to be taken. And I think Sean was going to say a little bit about Cornwall councils. Yeah?
Yeah, well, sorry to carry on, but I was just going to say, I propose we say no and move it on quickly. But I'll let Sean say something.
Well, I'm just going to put the Cornwall Council's position on this at the moment. As you may be aware, the government set a mission by, for 2030 that every part of the country that wants the devolution deal can apply for one. This is for getting as much money as you can out of government, which offers powers of devolution deal with powers with a simplified long-term funding settlement from central government. The Levelling Up White Paper makes a clear case for devolution as a way to improve productivity and reduce regional disparities. Devolution would critically to deliver the government's 12 headline levelling up missions, strengthening local leadership to act more flexibly and innovatively to respond to local needs, whether on transport, skill or regeneration. In the Levelling Up White Paper, the government set clear the menu of the options for areas that we wish to unlock the benefits of devolution. This will put a strong emphasis on high profile, directly elected local leadership to ensure strong local governance and joint working across sensible and coherent economic geographies, as was mentioned earlier in this meeting. The most comprehensive package is the Level 3 deal for areas such as Cornwall as a large unitary authority with a strong and most accountable leadership, such as a mayoral single unitary authority led by a directly elected mayor. So that Level 3 is, if you've got the mayor, then that brings in more money. I'm not saying that's the correct way to go ahead, but that's how it's set out by government. Level 2 offers the devolution to a single government institution without a directly elected mayor. So it could be like we've got at the moment at Cornwall, which is the leader and then the cabinet governance model. Level 1 offers for devolution of local authorities with lesser joint working arrangements, such as joint committee models, such as town council or here in Bude. Cornwall Council, its current form, was set up in 2009 and is the third largest unitary local authority in England, so nearly just under 600,000 residents. We are the second largest unitary by area, but the 9th least densely populated of all the 59 unitary authorities. Cornwall offers enormous potential to take a new approach to total place to deliver what the residents deserve by the levelling up of missions with the support of the government. Since the devolution deal in 2015, the demographics of Cornwall have led to acute demand pressures across public services, particularly in the provision of social care and affordable housing, which we're all aware of is a crisis point at the moment. The devolution deal will also make significant contributions to the economic development of the UK by accelerating the transition of carbon neutral economy by harnessing Cornwall's unique opportunities such as floating offshore wind technology, just to mention one. The proposed devolution deal reinforces government's commitments and the implications of the previous European treaties, as Cornwall faces a range of challenges which impact on the productivity levels and ability to grow. These include cross-cutting low productivity, low level of higher qualifications such as pockets of deprivation, lack of capacity with the business sector, and low research and development investment levels. The devolution deal will bring significant growth in important sectors and other government initiatives, including 132 million to the Shared Prosperity Fund, which I mentioned earlier, 99 million from the Towns and Future High Street Fund, and 14.3 million from Getting Building Fund. The Cornwall devolution deal will unlock significant long-term funding and give the Council greater freedom to decide how best to meet local needs. It is clear that the greater local powers and investments are needed to level up, to tackle the challenges facing Cornwall, and to harness its economic opportunity for the benefit of the people of Cornwall who work and live in this wonderful duchy. The government recognises that devolution is a journey, and one that will cause serious debate among us all who really care about our community. I think that's where the debate will continue next. The agreement could be the first step in the process for further devolution made possible, having adopted a directly elected mayor model, hence the level 3, which will bring in greater funds for us. Now, with regards to timing, we understand that between the senior officers of Cornwall Council and government ministers, they're debating the level of funding. Now, we shall know by the end of next week what level we'll be looking at for Cornwall. Then that will go before the Cabinet, and then the Cabinet will obviously debate it, and then what we will do is go out to consultation, which will probably take us right the way through to the end of the year, till December. Now, that public consultation will be two forms. It will be either online, and also we'll make it available in paper form so that people who don't use online facilities can still take part. So that will be heavily advertised and publicised. And what we will hopefully be doing is by the end of, well, the early part of January, have it in place so we know what, which way we're going, if we're going to have a directly elected mayor or stay as we are.
Just one second.
Just to let you know that there will be a free vote by members, and that will say will be taken in the early part of January. So if there's any direct questions that I can answer, I should try to do so.
Take a question now. Yeah, if you want to ask that now, Kevin, and then we'll get Peter's
we will definitively know the amount of bribe that the government are going to give us to accept the Mayor Act proposal before it's debated by Cabinet.
Well, I would suggest, I don't like the word bribe. The only difference between having a mayor, directly elected mayor, it would be a directly elected mayor rather than the leader of the council. So it would be the same process.
Yeah, but
the directly elected mayor will still be answerable to the Cabinet and the council.
Well, we will know definitively the amount of money that goes with the tag Mayor.
We will do, yes. Yeah, we will know that by hopefully the end of next week. That will be publicised.
Yeah. So I was curious because obviously we saw the letter, and one of the things was asking us to pass a motion to call on Cornwall Council to conduct a referendum. So when do you think that actual referendum would be?
That will be during the consultation period. So you have to actually, I think it's 5,000 signatories to ask the council to hold a referendum.
Yeah.
The council have got the ability not to hold a referendum if they feel so, but that's where the free vote comes from all the members, because a lot of the members that I speak to, irrespective of their political persuasion, they've all got different views on the mayoral situation.
When you say members, do you mean Cornwall Council?
Cornwall councillors.
Yeah. So when you say referendum, are you asking members of the public?
The members of the public have got to sign a petition, basically,
Yeah.
asking for a referendum, and the minimum is 5,000
And then if we get a referendum,
Yeah.
does that mean it is actually you go to, us as normal people go to a ballot somewhere and put a cross on, and that's going to be before Christmas?
That will be decided before Christmas.
Cool.
Yeah, because we want to actually get it up and running.
Yeah.
Get all the finance in place, the new administration, which we have full announcement. We don't know what's happening at the moment, do we?
Yeah.
With regards to the government. But that is the programme. We're hoping to get it all up and running by January.
Cool.
But it gives us a good run-in period so that you guys, if you want to, have a referendum, get yourselves organised. I think there are groups that have already started that in other parts of the county. I think they've got to about 2,000 signatories so far. So there's a lot of work to do on that if you guys want to ask for a referendum. Okay. Then the council's been open with that. There's no, let's say we've got the free vote. Everybody's got their own opinion. I'm on the fence. I'm still on the fence about it, but it's got to be a good, for us to go for the mayoral situation, it's got to be a bloody good deal. Excuse my French, but a bloody good deal for Cornwall. Well, I hate the word pride, but
Peter's just going to give us the other side of the Let Cornwall Decide campaign. Did you want to ask a question on something that Sean said, or do you want to let Peter?
I just wanted to make a comment that this could, in time, the government will just decide that you're going to have a mayor. Because, see, we thought that having a unitary authority was wonderful. And the way that it's done, they don't provide, they only provide services they have to by law. But there's none of the other stuff that you used to get with North Cornwall District Council. If you remember, they used to do all sorts of things. Yeah. North Cornwall District Council was absolutely brilliant. And North Cornwall District Council was one of, if not the best, district council in the county of Cornwall. I know that personally. Because we've used that. They were absolutely brilliant, right? So what I'm concerned about is it may well be that Cornwall will end up remaining the same and not have a mayor. But 2 years later down, the government might will say, no, you've got to have a mayor.
They can't.
They can't? No. Say that again.
They can't. Right.
Okay.
I'll be quite happy to take you to...
Yeah, no, you take me anywhere, mate. It's all right.
No, it's all right.
I'm taking you as a man of your word, and I hope it is long enough to see that happen.
Thank you very much. So Peter, I think you were going to give us a little few words on...
Do you know what, it feels like I'm taking over this meeting again. Right, okay, so for the avoidance of any doubt, I am the Let Cornwall Decide representative for Bude. Okay, and I've taken my little banners into the triangle with Sean last weekend, and I did ask, just check with the clerk and yourself, Amanda, if that was okay, and I did do one previous. So I also hold the petition, which people can sign. I haven't got that many signatures yet, but I think what will happen is that will gather pace fairly quickly as we go through the summer. So I just want to be absolutely sure that people understand this. A mayoral role for Cornwall is a massive change in the way we govern ourselves. At the moment, Cornwall Council, I'm not a particularly big fan of the way our governance is, but as Sean said, the way Cornwall Council governance work is we have a leader and a cabinet. And effectively it's 10 Cornwall councillors who are on the winning side after the election, get together, they elect their leader, and then the leader has the ability to elect their cabinet. They take every single decision, apart from sort of minuscule stuff like licensing, which has to be done very quickly, and planning, which has a separate process. But effectively, every big decision in Cornwall Council is taken by 10 people, and they're big budget holders and they have an awful lot of power. What Cornwall councillors, such as Sean himself, have is effectively a power of appointment. So if the cabinet member makes a decision, or cabinet makes a decision, leader makes a decision, we can call that decision in, but it's always after the event, and that's called a role of scrutiny. I don't particularly like it, but it appears to work okay. I'm not a fan, because I think the councillors should have a lot more influence in policy making. And some of you might remember I've talked about inquiry panels at Cornwall Council, which happened in the previous council. I sat on several of them, I chaired 2 of them, And those inquiry panels effectively do deep dives into subject matters, and I talked briefly about what potential one for tourism in Cornwall earlier at this meeting, and they will make recommendations to the Cabinet, which the Cabinet can then choose to adopt or not, as the case may be. That's how it works in a minute. If you had a mayoral role, the politically elected mayor would appoint his or her own cabinet, right? And as such, they would obviously pick from their friendly group, and they would have ultimate power over pretty much everything that happened in Cornwall. Now, as Mr. George said earlier, if you're a mayor and you're listening to your weighted population, well, there's a massive weighted population in the far southwest, and a massive area of ex-mining and a massive area of poverty, even though we have heard that Bude is, I think, the worst for child poverty in Cornwall. But when you get big communities like that, they tend to get responded to. And that's why we hear every time, oh, it's all about Truro, everything happens down there and nothing happens up here. I don't think a mayoral role or a mayor would be able to serve the rural and the peripheral areas of Cornwall well. It just couldn't work. I can't see it. The other issue that I have with this, and this is where I can't help but get political, right? Voters in Cornwall are effectively split into three parties, and I'm going to try not to name those parties because it seems to me the wrong thing to do at the town council. But you've got two main political parties in Cornwall. You can always guess what they are. One of them gets approximately 40% of the vote, one of them approximately gets 30% of the vote. The other 30% of the vote is split by independent councillors and also maybe on Kerno and other smaller political groups. And historically what's happened is, if there hasn't been a clear majority at a county vote, a coalition is made. And that's what's happened over the last 2 or 3 councils. The current council that we have has a clear majority of one particular political party. And that's fine, that's the way it goes. Right, but what I believe could happen, and this is one of the big dangers about a mayoral role, is that the party with the 40%, because they've proposed a first past the post system, every time over the whole of Cornwall would get the mayoral role. So you'd end up with one political party holding the mayoral role, who potentially then could have a council with a much different political makeup, and it would be a bun fight. It would lead to, in my opinion, crazy politics and very potentially like 4-year periods of stasis where nothing gets agreed, because you've got a mayor of one political flavour and a council that doesn't agree with anything. So I think that it's a very dangerous position to put ourselves in, and I don't think a mayoral role works for Cornwall. I also get highly irritated at the suggestions that Councillor Kevin made about effectively looking at it as a bribe and the devolution. We already have a devolution level 2 deal in Cornwall, and these are banded areas. We must be aware, okay, and make no bones about this. If we had a mayor with a level 3 devolution package, the main power they would have would be to load our council tax with their pet projects. It wouldn't come from central government, it would come from our own pockets. That's the main objection, one of the main objections that I also have. But anyway, I've laid out my antipathy for the mayoral role. What I want to persuade this council to do is to support the principle of a referendum. Because if we're going to have this big change in the way that we're governed, we as citizens of Cornwall should have the choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Yes,
Sorry, Nick, before
Oh, sure. Yeah.
anyone can put themselves forward as a mayoral position. It doesn't have to be a member of the current council. Anybody can put themselves forward.
There's a twist.
So if you fancy it, you can do it. So,
Thank you.
sorry. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem, no problem. There's a lot to unpick there, and a lot to think about. I think, obviously, you know, the principle of a referendum is.
I fully support that.
Whether you support the idea of a mayor or not, I think the idea of a referendum is important. We're fairly unique or fairly unusual in our makeup. Yeah, I'm trying to work out what I think. It's very interesting. But yeah, a referendum.
Yes, Katie.
Yeah, so in order for, I mean, it's obviously effectively almost free to a certain extent for us as a town council to pass a motion to say that we want Cornwall Council to do a referendum, but there was also other things such as if we can be doing street stores and things like that, and all sorts. Like, the thing that I'm interested in is basically the cost to us, or is there basically a budget, like in terms of staff time, in terms of actual physical like materials and stuff, for us to put a real presence behind it, or do we literally just want to say, yeah, this is great, and then push it forward, you know? So I guess we haven't really, there's nothing here about like potential cost to us as a town council, like financial and staff time and things like that. Just for us to be able to support the referendum, never alone what will come afterwards, which is being able to inform people of both sides and things like that.
I would advise that really this is a principle that you are being essentially asked to do, and I wouldn't advise that you actually look to use town council resources to what could turn out to be a political campaign.
Yeah.
That's where we're on very dodgy territory, and one I'm very
I think that would be challenged.
Yes,
and all I can advise you to do is to get in touch with the organisations that are already up and running, that have got these 2,000 odd votes or signatories, to try and get it to the fine, rather than work alone. But you're right, Clark, that don't lead it from Bude-Stratton, because that will be challenged and it'll be a total waste of your time.
Did you
Sorry,
have
sir.
your hand up for?
Yeah,
I'll go to Kevin.
I just wanted to reaffirm what I said right at the start. That, I think the town council should not vote for a mayor. That's my own personal view.
Yeah, but you haven't got a vote.
I know.
Kevin?
Well, that's the trouble. You don't have a vote, even though I'm a resident of Cornwall. I don't have a vote.
No, you have if you join the referendum.
Well, I know.
My points, I'll try and make it short. When I looked at it as an agenda item, and I was trying to think through it, I was slightly worried, because we all know from recent referenda and from what they want to do in Scotland, that being for or against a referendum is often a proxy for being for or against the principle that the referendum is about. So I was a little bit dubious as to whether this council should be signing up to it. Having heard the arguments for the mayor from the council, and having found myself wanting to eat the table and jump them down and say words that are not allowed in this chamber, I now fully endorse the principle of the referendum.
Okay. Mike?
Yeah, I stated my position earlier on, but a lot of us came in here on the idea of consultation with the public. This is a huge change that affects our area as well as everywhere else. So it would be extraordinary for me to vote against the idea of a referendum. I know how I'm going to vote in the referendum, but that's by the by. So yes, I think
For there to be a referendum. Yes. Simon?
So there is suggested wording from this is the Cornwall design. Yeah, okay. Shall I read that through and see if people have that? Bude-Stratton Town Council believes that the way Cornwall is governed is extremely important to our local residents. We note the emerging proposals for a possible change to a powerful mayor of Cornwall with their own staff, budget and choice of cabinet. We believe that such a system should only be implemented if the people of Cornwall support it. We call on Cornwall Council and our local Cornwall councillors to ensure that there is a referendum of all voters in Cornwall on whether to introduce this significant change as set out in the relevant legislation. I think that's pretty...
I think it's fair and democratic.
Yeah.
that was a proposal also.
Yeah. All those in favour of it as it is. Yeah. Thank you very much. Fantastic. Right. Okay. Number 11. To authorise the town clerk in consultation with the mayor and deputy mayor to enter into negotiations to purchase one Lord's Court in Stratton, the site Stratton stores on behalf of the town council. And before we have any questions or anything, I want to make it really clear that we are considering this option as a way of securing something for the community. We are aware that there is another local organisation that has also expressed an interest, and I want to make it really clear that we are not here to, we would step back basically in this instance and allow that organisation to go ahead if that's what they want to do. We would step forward if they decided not to, basically. I just want to make that very clear, we're not in any kind of, you know. Did you want to say anything more, Keith, before I develop?
Well, I've done the various papers on there are risks, there are, you know, I always say to you, there's nothing easy, there's a whole set of legislation and rules, especially if we are going to become a landlord, so there's a whole bunch of things that we would have to get right, both you as the council and us as officers, so, but clearly there is also the understanding of what the community benefit is, the loss to the community should that provision of the store and post office not be available. And this actually seems a far simpler option than redeveloping the other site in Stratton, which has a whole set of issues which would have to be overcome, and of course the timing of that, given what may happen to the store site in between. So, but really, I think where we're going, given that we know there's another interest, that this would almost be, we'd have to add some words to subject to.
Write some down.
Because clearly, if there's someone better placed to secure the store in its future, that's fine as well. We are saying a backstop.
I'll read out a suggested thing in a minute. Do you want to
No,
say something
no,
first?
you can. Because you've had consultation with them.
It's only just the suggested sort of, yeah. Was there any questions before I carry on with that?
Does everybody know the other side? The other group, which is Lancemaster Trust. Which, I mean...
I think we've managed to avoid so far.
The whole point of the discussion is that the council has stimulated the discussion to save the store. And through that discussion, you know, Lancemaster were approached as well, and they are quite happy now to move forward and take it on, which is what it's about. It's just saving that shop.
Absolutely. So the same end result.
Yeah, so it's the same end result, and it actually costs us nothing.
Yeah, I suppose so. For tonight, we wanted to get the will of the council in case that doesn't go with that other organisation. That means that then Keith can carry on if that is the will of everybody. So I'm going to add a bit of wording on. So it would be, I propose that we authorise the town clerk in consultation with the mayor and deputy mayor to enter into negotiations to purchase one Lord's Court Stratton on the site of Stratton Stores on behalf of the town council, subject to an alternative arrangement which secures the accommodation and shop. So that's to say if that other arrangement comes about, we step back and allow them to it. If that doesn't come about, we've given permission to pursue. So that's my proposal. Yes.
I'll second that before you say anything.
Go on, Simon.
So my one concern about this is that there's the element that we don't know about this is how much it's going to cost to convert that shop into flats and to do what we hope it's going to do. So there's a lot of unknowns around this. So I think
we're not converting the shop into flats. That's the whole point, is to save the shop. That's what we're doing it for.
But then you've got the flats.
Oh, I know, that's it too. The point is to save the shop for the people of Stratton. That's number one. The rest is technically immaterial.
The proposal is in effect to take over the building, buy the building as is, which is the shop up underneath, and there are 2 flats and 2 beds above. So in purchasing, you get the whole lot because they're not separable.
Okay.
So we become the purchaser becomes the landlord of the shop, which is fine, and the post office secure, and also would inherit, as it were, the sitting tenants and the tenancies of the houses.
Yes.
So that's really what now, as we've named them, obviously our local charitable trust is a property owning. That's what its business is. Very much, that's how it invests its money and makes its return. It makes eminent sense that if they are prepared and can invest that we stand back and let them do it.
Yes. Katie?
I really would like to try and, if there's a way to tweak the wording to ensure that it is that specific group, basically, that specific trust, because
Yes.
yeah, I mean that's what I want to try and do in some way or form, but I don't know how to do it without explicitly writing said name of trust in there.
Yeah.
If you want
It's
to.
in the public domain anyway.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, it's
yeah.
not. It's now.
It is.
I don't know if you can or not though.
Well, we could be, but to be honest, as far as I'm aware, that is the only alternative, and I doubt very much there would be another.
Well, as in, like, a developer would come along and say that they would be able to keep the shop open, but might not. And I know, obviously, but then, you know, they can literally just point to our thing and say, look, it says if someone else did. And it said that you'll go away. I was basically protecting ourselves to ensure that
The end result is
the end result is what we want,
Yeah.
rather than
That's
somebody
correct.
promising something.
Well,
Kevin?
Rather than present a binary resolution where we'll say the Blanchard's Trust has it, if they don't have it, we'll look into getting it. Is there also the possibility of slipping in a second option, that if the Blanchminster Trust are just falling slightly short or have some problems, that we could facilitate work with the Blanchminster Trust? Because I would believe it to be better that the council put its hand in its pockets for a few quid, rather than take on an unknown role of being a landlord. So is there some sort of halfway house where it's not? Is that too difficult?
I imagine that at this stage that's too difficult, and I'd be very surprised how Blanchminster Trust have their own operation arrangements. However, I mean, should there be a need for a further conversation, then that can come back to the council. I probably wouldn't try to wrap it into this because it makes it very complicated.
But I didn't want us to commit to a sort of binary, Blanchminster do it, Blanchminster fall 10 quid short, council has to do it. You know, council can give Blanchminster 10 quid. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Could I just add a word to council? Hopefully, if we add the word satisfactory alternative arrangement.
Yes.
So we would have to be confident that whatever, I can only see one thing in the table, but it has to be satisfactory.
Yeah.
That we are confident that whatever delivers secures the store. That's the priority.
And secures the lettings, existing
Yeah.
lettings for the existing
Yeah.
local tenants.
Yeah.
Humane and
You know,
as well, because that's a whole another thing, isn't it? So, yeah.
Mike?
Possibly a bit late to mention this, but we really have tipped our hand in the negotiations here.
What do you mean?
Well, if I was the person that owned that building and I was selling it and I knew the Blanchminster Trust...
It's all, I've spoken to the owner personally and I've made it very clear that we are not entering into
But what
any
if somebody
kind of-
comes in now and offers them 20 grand more, 30 grand more, 40 grand more, and we have committed to buying it? If I was the person selling it, I would quite happily walk away from the deal with you lot and take
But
more money.
I don't see how we can ever do anything about that. You know, that
Well,
is
that's what I mean.
To be very clear,
What I'm getting at is, are we setting an upper limit where we're not going to go past, or are we going to get ourselves into a bidding war?
This authorises us to enter into negotiations.
That's it.
Now, if they put the price up to $1 million, I would suggest that we're walking away.
So you will come back to us with the deal, and we will get to decide whether we are happy with the deal, or we are authorising you to do the deal. That's what I'm getting
Enter
at.
into negotiations.
Enter into negotiations.
Yeah.
That's
So
to begin, so...
we've got to be able to actually...
Because, you know,
get
again,
to
we
a
fall
deal
back into the whole, we're a consultation council. We're about to make the biggest decision this council is going to take this time, and we're not going to ask anybody. I mean, we can have a fairly confident guess that they would say, yes, do it. But the results of the consultation telling us they want us to do it are not in. So are we committing to the deal, or are you coming back to us to decide?
I can come back to you to decide.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so at the end of the negotiations, I would like to know the result of what I'm voting for.
Peter?
Could I give way to Councillor Herbert Coulson? I think put her hand up before me.
Sorry, yes, shout if I do that, I forget.
I'm totally in agreement about reserving the shop for Stratton.
Yeah.
Totally. I totally get your point and I agree with you totally. My biggest concern is that Blanchminster have a history of managing buildings, they have a history of managing accommodation, they know all the rules and regulations about being a landlord, and being a landlord nowadays is humongous. There's all the energy regulations, the gas, the electric, all those things you've got to do. And I just feel that in that building itself, knowing Stratton, to be a landlord of that particular building, you could be taking on, for residents, a huge headache and a huge money debt. Because it's been on the market for quite a while, and nobody's bidden. So, yes, I'm in agreement, but I think if we could get Blanchminster to do it, it'd be much better.
We need some very detailed surveys of
Yeah.
that ongoing cost over and above the initial fee to buy it.
Yeah, and I just put in my days back in archaeology and that's not building.
Did you want to say something as well? Yes, go.
Yeah. I don't think it's a particular secret, but Councillor Tilsey and I, along with the facilities manager and the charge hand, visited the premises on
Wednesday?
Friday.
Oh,
No.
Wednesday.
Wednesday. Yesterday.
Oh my
Yesterday morning was a long time ago though.
a lot of water has passed over the process, to be fair. Right, okay. So, with a view to just making sure that it wasn't a complete lemon, that any one of us could just have a look in and see how the place is falling down. The place presented as one that has its challenges, that's clear, but all of the individual letting units appear to meet standards currently. The retail unit had some alterations done to it, which meant that it probably would fall outside of what regulations would require. So I can't pretend there wouldn't be some work that would need to be done straight off. I can't also pretend that I don't know that the majority of that building I believe to be cob construction. And a cob construction building, as we all probably know, comes with a very individual set of requirements and maintenance and basically looking after. So it's not a building that would be particularly easy. But we're talking about a very clearly stated desire for this council to involve itself in trying to provide some form of affordable and social rent level housing. This provides that. It provides us the opportunity to be a very good landlord in the centre of Stratton, which is a community that all too often we get accused of not doing enough for. And it also gives us the opportunity to secure the location of a community stores, which we've been told repeatedly is incredibly important to that community. And I think it ticks so many boxes in my mind that unless at that visit yesterday morning had turned up something really awful, like it was going to cost us hundreds of thousands of pounds to maintain this building, that it's almost a no-brainer that we sort of have, I don't want to say we have to do it, that's the wrong word, it's the right thing for the council to do, I feel in my bones at this point in time. Yes, we'll have to have detailed surveys, but I don't think, unless they turn up something that the building is going to self-implode in 10 minutes, we're probably still going to have to do it. So I'm supportive of the direction, I'm supportive of the fact that if there's somebody else that we respect in the queue in front of us, that we give way to them, but if they don't manage to do the deal, I would be very happy to see this council do it, because I think it's exactly the sort of thing that we said we wanted to do.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. When it comes to Katie, and then I really need to move it on if I can.
Yeah, well, I was trying to figure out how to move on because also, normally obviously when you buy a house, you put in an offer and then you get surveys done. But obviously I'm guessing this council would have to approve the offer that you would put in. But then we would also probably want a survey done before. Like, basically, when do you assign the budget for getting the survey done for it?
I would suggest if we knew we were going ahead with it, we would get the survey done. We'd obviously have the opening discussion.
Yeah.
And maybe even opening offers, but subject to survey. And then we would get the survey done, because then the council would decide on knowing both valuation and on the survey results.
So, what I'm trying to say is, like, as part of this motion, would it be beneficial to have that budget for a survey, or do you reckon just leave it for later? Is that one? That's what I'm trying to figure out, basically.
It's a fair point, because I would be taking that the commission of the survey would have to be part of this.
Yeah.
How does it, because I've never bought a house, so I don't know how it works with the survey and everything. The Blanchminster, when I was speaking to Chris the other day, he said that the next step for them is they're going to get a survey done. And he said that he would be very happy to share the findings of that with us. So what does that mean? Does that mean that we then, I don't know.
Well, I would say, I think where we are at, if I understand correctly, is that if the Blanchminster are proceeding and do the survey,
Thank you very much.
yeah, I mean, I would imagine they will continue through, and that will be that. I mean, so I won't commission anything immediately, because we need to know what the Blanchminster
Of
do.
course, absolutely.
But if we are taking it forward, we will need to get a survey. Now, actually, there'll be a few legal issues about if they've commissioned a survey, the liability of the surveyor to us.
It's,
So there might be something else, but we'll cover that off.
So that would be like in a month's time.
No, Madam Chair, just to cut across this, if Glasgow decide not to take it, I would like to have a single item agenda, you know, a full
Hold a meeting.
full council meeting to discuss it.
Hold an
That's the only way, really.
That's
There's
the
so many
easiest.
unknowns at the moment.
Yeah,
What's talking
absolutely.
about.
Yeah, we just wanted to get the desire of the council.
Yes, I completely support the idea, but I have to be honest, if the Blanchminster, who are experts in this, decide not to go ahead with it, I would be terrified of authorising it.
They're doing it, don't worry.
You would want to know why.
I would want to know why we suddenly went, oh, that's a bad idea, we're not doing it. Rather than committing to just going like, bang, we're going to buy it.
So authorising the town clerk in consultation with me and Simon, basically, to enter into negotiations, subject to an alternative arrangement,
suitable,
satisfactory arrangement, which secures the accommodation and shop.
I'll second that.
Thank you. So all those in favour?
Yeah, fine.
Thank you. Right.
Can I just make a comment?
Very quickly, yes.
I'm pleased that you want to go into...
Sorry, member of the public just speaking. Sorry. Go, Chris.
I'm pleased that you've done what you did, because Stratton needs this to be stayed for that. But if you knew that there was a direct family connection to the Blanchminster Trust, they're going to get it. They'll get it anyway. You won't have to worry about your liabilities or... I'm not telling you.
Are you implying something?
Well, it's not unreasonable for a charity like Blanchminster, you know, they have loads of money. They have money, they have direct access. You know, they don't have to go to the district valuer when you want to borrow £2 million to buy this place. They will just do it, and I will be absolutely gobsmacked if they're not the new owners of that property.
All right, lovely. Thank you. Right, number 13. Receive a progress report on the Compass Point Storm Tower project and authorise the town clerk in consultation with the project steering group to conclude the legal agreements with Cornwall Council.
Yes, right. Just to say that we're still working through requirements of the freeholder to secure permissions for the next stage of work. So we have a line of communication open now. The main issue beyond that is around the agreements with Cornwall Council. There's a funding agreement, a partnership agreement, and a licence to use the land. I've lost count of how many pages those three add up to, but it's probably over 200. Some of those issues are still unacceptable, in my opinion, and undeliverable. Some of the clauses within those. They place risks on the town council, or place all the risks on the town council, really, rather than sharing the partnership. They ask for warranties, which our contractors can't really deliver or aren't used to delivering for projects of this scale. And they're also trying to put long-term maintenance responsibilities upon the town council for the tower. So we're having an ongoing discussion with them around redlining and those things. I've spoken to Councillor Roy with his Cornwall councillor hat on, who is securing support for ensuring that there is common sense, but we aren't there quite yet. So really, we do need those arrangements in place, those agreements in place to actually further the works and to actually let contracts, which is the next major part to do. But that's where we stand at the moment.
Okay. Did you have a question, Mr. Jennings?
I think if it's isn't done this year, it ain't going to be there next year. Because I suggest if you want to have a good look, go down at low tide and walk out round, and that bloody cliff is taking a pounding. And I see it, a fair bit from outside, looking back when we were there. It's getting bad.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Yeah. Yes, Peter.
Can I respond to Mr. Jennings?
Yeah.
Oh, go on. I want you to be absolutely clear, it isn't going to get moved this year.
Well,
The count,
it might move.
that's not down to any individual, but the current plan, providing all the legalities can proceed in the way which the town clerk described, the current plan is to let the contracts and have bodies on site in the spring of 2023, that's next spring, to dismantle, move and reconstruct before the onset of the 2023 autumn season. That's the
But
current
you've got the
time window.
autumn and winter of 2022, 23 to go yet.
Yep.
It's looking bad, I can assure you.
Yes.
I've been down that road.
Yeah.
Just going to take a comment from Kevin.
It might not be a point for this meeting, but it was suggested that one of the ways that this thing could be done, which is not a way anybody would ever want it to be done, is that there will be a very detailed scanning of the structure, so it will be documented for the future. I would suggest that if we're not going to be physically moving the tower until at least next spring, that we maybe think about pushing Cornwall Council to do that before maybe the winter takes it away and we're not having the opportunity.
I can make you happy. It's been done.
Oh,
It's been done.
it's all done. Well done. At least it's recorded somewhere, even if it's on a computer file.
So,
Just
yes.
Just so Mr. Jennings knows, if it actually falls in, if you build a new one, much cheaper. They are identical.
It's a good idea, and I'm sure you can go around here and explain that to all the people who put money into the bloody thing.
Yeah, but it'll still be there, though. But
Right.
not the original.
Was there anything else from your report, Keith? Because, yes, we need to authorise you in consultation with the Project Steering Group to conclude the legal.
I'll propose that.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Cool.
All those in favour?
Yep.
Wonderful, thank you. Brilliant. Okay, and I think, Mike, are you going to give us a little update
Yes,
on
I'm
the
up.
sports facility?
Basically two things. Just to give the two new councillors a little bit of background, we discovered that the transatlantic cable runs through the area we were planning to put the expansion on. Could have caused an issue, but unfortunately myself, Katie and Keith had a meeting, was it last week I think, with about 14 members of the various stakeholders, BT, Subcom, Lumens, those basically anybody with a cable currently running through that conduit was there, engineers, managers. And they have agreed in principle, it needs to be put into writing, but they've agreed in principle that they are happy for us to work on that site around it. We will expand back towards it. We will then have to leave a green strip, and we'll have something up above the top with a couple of little links to it. And they have effectively said that if they want somebody on site, which is fine, not all each company, they will nominate somebody to represent the whole group. And if there is a risk to the conduit or the cable, they will mitigate it, whether it's steel plating or whatever, to get the heavy plant up across it. So in principle, that problem has hopefully gone away. We can carry on with our plans. It fits in nicely with the ideas the user group came up with, because they wanted a bowl section up on the top and then drop downs into the flatland area. Fits in nicely with the environmental aspect, because we're going to have this 6-metre green strip in the middle where, potentially you can sit and watch the kids or whatever, that kind of stuff. The only thing they wanted was the right to access that cable if anything goes wrong, which is a no-brainer. They were at pains to point out in the 20 years it's been there, they've never needed to do that. But before we start any work, one of them is going to stick a camera down there and do a full conduit survey to ensure the integrity of that conduit before we start any work. They will then do the same again at the end before we sign off. So that's that part of it. What we actually need to get to tonight is we've also had some good news in regards to the self-funding. We've shown an expression of interest in self-funding that's available down there. We have been invited to submit a bid, which is fantastic. With Frankie, our project manager on maternity, we have nobody capable of writing the bid. So what I, or the working group, would like to do is hire in somebody with the specific skills to write that bid for us on a limited contract to do exactly that. Obviously using the money that's already been set aside for the project. So it's effectively a proposal to authorise Keith or the staff, whoever, to hire in somebody to write the bid for us, to get the bid through, and hopefully get us that funding. So, if there's any questions, I'll try and answer them. If not, that's my proposal.
Do we have to get 3 quotes? What happens here?
We'll put it out and see what we get. We don't have to get 3 quotes. I mean, ideally, it would be good to have options, but we will limit the time scale and just see what we
One day. Yeah.
Well, it's got to be in by October, so that's why we can't wait for Frankie to come back. There's £100,000 worth of funding available, and we need a professional to write the bid for us, effectively.
I second that proposal.
Well, I've got my hand up to second it, but
Okay, sorry.
I was politely waiting to speak.
All those,
You've got
All those in favour? Do we not see Canada? All those in favour?
Oh, sorry,
All those in favour? Yes, that's everybody. Okay, thank you. Okay, that was everything, Mike, for you.
that was it, yeah.
Thank you
It's
for
all
that.
been used, so.
Okay, lovely. So on to number 15, consider the options to provide Christmas lights and make the appropriate allocation from reserves if required. And I was just reminding myself of this one actually.
Well, this got kind of, I think, shuffled up from the oversight committee, who, when we started looking at figures and things, felt it was full council allocation, because there was not actually a direct budget set aside. As people remember, this has been doing the rounds. Put it back out to paper. I was putting it out earlier today. So there are a number of options, and this was basically on the premise of hiring. Now, when you start to look at the detail, the cost of the various materials for the options are X, and then that is split over 3 years, X plus 35%. So, and on top of that is the installation charge as well to take up and put down, which is not obviously a small feat in itself, but on the amount of things which have been costed here, that adds up to not inconsiderable sum in itself. So you've got kind of 3 options in terms of the hiring, which came in, I'm going to make sure I'm reading this correctly, if you wanted everything doing, it doesn't need doing, coming at 19, 16.5.7 and £16,500 in terms of annual hiring over each for 3 years. The alternatives are around purchasing. Now, I must admit, I'm not double checked with Steve, obviously the cost here may not be the cost to buy, that may be the cost of the
I did
provision.
speak to him when I saw him yesterday.
Yeah.
I've forgotten as well. I asked Steve his thoughts on it, and he said that he, just throwing a figure, don't hold me or him to this, but he said, well, you know, if we could agree a budget of 2025, we could put that up as a facilities team every year, and we would keep that for however long those would last. So, for value for money, that sounds obviously the better way to go. But Peter and then Paul, please.
Yeah,
Well,
thanks.
We're going to say the same thing anyway.
Yeah.
Well, do you want me to say it or do you say it? Right, okay, so I looked at the proposal and I thought
50 grand plus for 3 years worth of Christmas lights is quite a lot of money. And
Yeah.
you know, if we were to ask the people if we didn't want to fund that out of their own pockets, I think we might get a mixture of answers. I think honestly the answer that we would get is probably that the people of Bude would want us to do something better than we do, but perhaps not spend in excess of £50,000 for a company to come in and we don't own anything.
Yeah.
So I did, like yourself, have a quick chat with the facilities manager and say that, you know, if we front loaded some of this and gave you a good sum of money up front, what do you think you could do? And he thought it would be entirely doable. It's a time of year when he thought he could find the capacity within his team to actually put some of this stuff up because they're not out busy cutting grass. And also, if we fall short on our own capacity, there's no reason, given the timescale we've got between now and Christmas, that he's got the time to perhaps approach 1 or 2 local contractors to help him with that work in terms of making the electrical connections and stuff. I also said that I would have a preference, if at all possible, that we could start thinking about some hard installations on properties that would be willing to allow us to do that, to make it much easier in future years to put up and take down some of this stuff that we do. So my preference would be not to hire at all, but to accept that we were thinking of in excess of £50,000 and perhaps be quite bullish about giving a substantial figure to the facilities manager to do a really good job this year, and perhaps even top it up with a good sum next year, so we could build up, making Bude something really good for the future.
Okay, I'll go to Paul and then I'll go to Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, with good housekeeping, we all do it. You know, you get this year's Christmas lights and then you add to them and add to them. You know, as long as you can look after them, then it's a no-brainer.
He's got storage now,
Yes,
so he was quite happy to
that's right, he's
buy
got
them and
storage.
keep them. Was the other point. Yes, Kevin.
The only point that I was going to make, and it might be boring, is we're committing to spend money on lights. Bloody great. But again, is there any kind of metric? Is there any way that we can ask people, maybe in retrospect after lights have gone up, has this boosted your trade? Has this increased footfall? Is there any numbers that we can put against this expenditure other than it's a good idea and it makes people feel nice at Christmas? So I'm slightly concerned to commit to spending 20 grand, which, right, maybe not a huge amount, but to what end? You know, to make people feel a little bit more jingle bells. But can we maybe think of ways to demonstrate whether this has or has not improved the town?
Can I use the word humble?
If I just respond, the only problem there is that obviously there are a lot of variables. With cost of living crisis upon us and such as to, I think, dare I say, it's about making sure people, traders get enough trade. I mean, I don't think there's going to be any
even if it's a questionnaire to the Chamber of Commerce, have the lights made a difference? Have you heard the buzz that the lights have made a difference? But I just feel uncomfortable committing money when we can't measure any outcomes other than it looks a bit nicer.
Yeah, so I used to go to the Chamber of Commerce a lot, like it's not like actual thing, and they, I remember there being a while ago, they were talking about how the Christmas lights which on and the late night shopping was extraordinary for them. So they already keep track of that sort of thing. So I'm sure we did actually have a representative that did go along to Chamber of Commerce, but I'm sure that's something that they can just take forward again and maybe try and encourage that late night shopping again. Basically, it's like a bit of a chicken and egg in this sort of circumstance where you're not going to do late night shopping, there's no Christmas lights. So yeah, like I think it's I mean we should be getting more data from everyone. You know, data is the way forward of the world at the moment. It's a great way to justify everything. So yeah.
Okay. Sean?
Yeah, I have 2 points. First, obviously, from an environmental perspective, like the more sustainable choice would be to hire and rent a product rather than buying something fresh, because this is a company that already exists, whether it's local or not. This is what they do. I don't think that the cost is necessarily justifiable in this specific instance with these designs. But the other question I had was, did the town council own Christmas lights before, and what happened to them? Because I'm pretty sure I heard something about them having some lights and then they stopped working. and or they've got stored badly, or I just want to make sure that if we're going to invest in a product, that it's really looked after so that it makes it more sustainable, because that's the only way that this is going to work, because otherwise we're just, you know,
Yeah, well, we did inherit a lot of equipment from Light Up Ute.
Right, okay. That's what it was.
The vast majority of which didn't meet standards and failed pack testing, etc. I mean, I will add, I mean, in our environment, putting things out, you know, electrical things out in the middle of winter for a month, they will not last forever, you know. And we did have some stuff. I'm not sure, did it survive the tree? Has it gone by then? I can't actually remember.
we've obviously still got the things that were in the tree.
Yeah.
But most of the stuff that came from Light Up You was done.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I was just going to follow on from the point Peter made and Kevin. The town team have applied for funding to carry out a large professional consultation. So this could perhaps be a question that comes up as part of that. It is literally about the economic viability of the town at a specific time of year. So they fit together quite nicely. And you know, yes, we need the data from the traders. I know the company I work for, they know exactly what is sold every day and who sold it and yada yada yada. That's how commission works. So the data is there. Whether they're willing to share it with us or even in percentile form, you know. But and like Peter says, you know, putting in some hard points so we future-proof ourselves. Now that could all be included in that town team consultation, charrette, or whatever route we go down with it going forward. So yes, I'd like to see us do something this year, but I'm not sure I want to commit to spending massive amounts of cash before we actually ask the people, do you want us to do this? And
okay.
Well, going back to the breakdown, I mean, in terms of the cost and how this may not be the supplier we would go with, but it was broken down into three distinct areas. Actually, the Strand wasn't really required because the Strand has got the lighting a lot, so that couple of thousand there, and therefore probably some of the install cost also would have been coming out of this regardless. And at the moment, the main breakdown is between the triangle and the castle. Now, up until now, we have tried to concentrate on the triangle being the centre of town and I suppose the thing nearest the shops and such where people would recognise. So, I mean, even in these and the fanciest one, which had a very tall kind of Christmas tree made of balls, kind of, that's why I couldn't put it. What was that? That was 13,800 odd for that, plus the other lighting around the triangle and the smaller options with the gift box type things, which were the £8,000 mark. So you could get for, I would suggest for a 10,000 type budget, you could get something decent for the triangle, maybe as a starting point. Whether you want to move on to the castle, which had a similar kind of £10,000, £11,000 for stuff in the castle.
And also use what we've already got if they still work.
We don't dump things which don't work. I think the only problem with what we had is it's, if anything, that may end up in the castle because it did. Because it was in the tree.
Yeah.
Now the remaining trees are not the same size, so I imagine we'll have we need something else. So I think I feel well with that.
Sorry, I'm just making some notes. Yes.
Yeah, Amanda, what I was going to say was, you should take the school groups skiing, and I still go skiing anyway, but over there, they put the lights up all winter, you know, and it really makes the place sparkle and the kids love it, you know.
Yeah.
Like along the Strand we have permanent lights. I think there could be some mileage in looking to put more permanent lights up, but also have a Christmas light up as well, you know.
That's a really
Because
nice
to make
idea.
it, and I'm sure the traders would love, you know, the place looking nicer. I know it's energy and electricity and all that, but you know, if people think Bude's a nice looking place, then look, it's bound to draw trade. So the workers will be happy.
Yeah.
What's that?
So I guess in a way of trying to move this on, so I know that our facilities manager mentioned between 20 and 25, and you just mentioned 10. Is there actually for our first year, a value which, because I'm guessing with that, we can look into permanent stuff. Like, this is the point, right? We're giving our facilities team the ability to look into permanent stuff, to look into where they're going to put it, so it's that flexibility too. So I'm happy with that concept. I want to know the figure now, basically, if that's cool.
Well, I'm just working off the quotes we've already been given, which breaks down between. So certainly, part is about the quality, part is about the amount and the locations. So I think for one point, if you want a decent showing both at the castle and at the triangle, you need to go for the higher amount because that's kind of where these figures add
That's
up.
what Steve was basing his
Yes,
suggestion
I think
on. He
that's...
said 25 to 30 would give you, yes,
Would you like a proposal?
Sure. Always.
Okay, I propose that the town council make a figure of up to £25,000 available to the facilities team for Christmas lights at the Triangle and Castle for this winter season.
Yes, that's basically what I wrote down, with a request to the town team, I'd started to write as well,
Yeah,
to
add it to the consultation process.
make sure that that is part of the consultation process. And,
I'm not unhappy.
and I wanted to also take in your point earlier about looking at
Permanent.
a more permanent
Yeah.
for future years. That was the other thing I didn't get to write that I was going to say.
I don't have a problem at all with the town team being
Incorporating.
drawn into this, right? But I will say the town team is about bringing forward capital projects, and I don't think shared prosperity or government funding for one moment would consider Christmas lights to be a suitable capital infrastructure project. But I'm not unhappy they should be considering it.
Just as part of the consultation.
Yeah, I'm not asking them to
you
be
know.
involved in paying or installing. It was just, if we're doing a consultation on the viability of the town, could we just add that question to it?
Yeah, I think that's fair. So,
I'll second it, like Peter said.
so the proposal ended up being to 25,000. Yeah, for the facilities team to buy some lights for our.
And fit. Because there might be.
Yes, absolutely. Also, for him, it would be for Steve to look into and come back to us on more permanent fixtures for future years as well at some point. And what was the other one? The town team.
Yes,
just add it to the consultation.
Just to add that into their consultation, which
Yeah.
I think is a very good. Yes, I will second that proposal. We'll go on. Yes, Mr. Jennings.
Could you put down on the consultation, just for forget all about Christmas?
No. And one little point actually as well is Stratton. Is what is including Stratton in all of this. I don't know what that.
Stratton already have a Christmas tree instead of Popple. We always do a Christmas tree in Stratton.
Okay.
And lights at Ratbury Gardens.
Okay, so we do, right, that's good. I was just
Maybe
checking we were looking after Stratton. That's good.
Maybe some of the stuff that used to be in the triangle could be heading over Stratton.
Castle.
Okay, so all those in favour of that very long proposal? Yeah, that's everybody. Okay, thank you. This one is a discussion, actually. So I've had a lot of contact, I'll read it first. So discuss the possibility of reinstating an antisocial behaviour patrol during the peak season and to make the appropriate allocation from reserves if required. Now, I brought this to council because I've had a lot of contact from local residents over the last few weeks. A lot of them have been beach hut owners, and they are at the point of some of them have given up their beach huts because the vandalism and the kind of damage being done is so bad and so regular. So they asked me originally, is there any possibility of having a patrol like we had during COVID, people going around and moving groups on and things. And I said I will take it as a discussion point. I think it's important we discuss it because it is obviously an issue for a lot of people locally. I did have a chat with Jamie, who isn't here tonight, because he's very involved with a lot of the youth locally, and I wanted to know what his thoughts were, because the idea of a patrol wasn't sitting quite right with me either. You know, I can see the benefits of having people going around and moving this on, but I kind of feel like I wish there was somewhere for these people to congregate instead. And we had a conversation with Steve, the facilities manager, and he sort of floated an idea of possibly to do with the Bencoolen Play Park. That was his initial thought, was that there could be an area there. He's seen it done elsewhere where there's a shelter and it's got even Wi-Fi coverage, so it really encourages them to congregate in a certain place rather than somewhere else. So that was my thoughts. I wanted to just have a discussion and see what people are thinking. Paul and then Peter.
I thought the police were going to step up and do that anyway. I'd heard through Julian Morris that they were increasing the patrols.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I still think, you know, we should do something.
Do something. Yeah. Peter?
I'm beginning to feel a bit odd now, because the principle of a youth shelter at the Bencoolen Play Park has been on the agenda for about 15 years.
Yeah, it was agreed many years ago as well.
Yeah, and you'll probably find there's a budget line still there of about 15,000
I didn't even know it had been a previous point of discussion.
I even chose one at the capital.
No way! Why did it not?
It was well, in my time it's been unagreed.
You probably find that one of the councillor perhaps involved in budgeting encouraged you to lose the project line somewhere somehow. Maybe, I don't know.
No, it was a resolution when previous council looked at the Bencoolen Play Park, when the last the refurbishment was done, it was, I do recall it being discussed, and at that point rejected.
Okay, well I can remember the flavour of that discussion, but I didn't realise that we'd actually resolved not to do it. The flavour of the discussion was that the councillors were very cautious. I'm not supporting this argument, I'm just telling you what it is, about providing a gathering point for a group, an age group that they felt could cause trouble. And that was the reasoning, and the reasoning behind the argument. I found it very difficult to support the argument, but I do think there are dangers inherent, and there would need to be a management strategy about anything that we do. So I'm absolutely supportive. I think if you're going to move kids on from somewhere, you can't just tell them to go. You've got to give them an alternative. And I think providing an alternative with some form of management, and that's the key thing to this, is where we should go.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Yes, Katie.
I can connect quite a few little dots over lots of different discussions here. So, first of all, we agreed to use some of the budget that we did have on the patrol for no new CCTV. And I know that some of that is also, one of the people involved with the CCTV also runs an ISP who provides public Wi-Fi. So every time there's a new CCTV camera pops up, he does the Wi-Fi for the camera, and he also can add public Wi-Fi around the town. And so if basically, instead of necessarily having a patrol, you had an on-call security instead, that could be a thing if it's the real issue, or police that you can call, but having like actual cameras pointing in specific areas is potentially more of a solution to this problem, which also provides them public Wi-Fi. And then if you do have, because that's I've been working on the play park a lot recently, and when I talked to Steve about the play park, about the fitness track area, after the discussion of having the fitness track areas of actually what do we want from the fitness area, then the old space of the potential old space of Katie's place, when it's potentially moved, could very much work for that type of, more teenage, young adult area too. Like there's a natural space that develops there that's basically already been, it's already set up, it's already got benches, and with not too much extra effort, could have specific CCTV there with Wi-Fi, which gives them access.
I don't know about the Wi-Fi, but Guinness Trust are already putting CCTV in on Swallow Close, so that there is coverage coming.
Yeah.
So that's good.
I mean, obviously it requires people to be watching said CCTV, but then at least it's a post-active, because as we've heard from Steve from the Oversight Committee, it actually is working. So we are starting to prosecute people that are happening. You know, there's relationship building with Bude-Haven from, like, you know, about specific people and things. There is changes and people are being fined and things are happening now because of that new CCTV. So I think it's something that we can,
I did, yeah. A lot of it's kind of been said. I really don't like the idea of folks patrolling around. I just think that any kind of antisocial behaviour is always like a byproduct of something else, and it's like we need to just give kids something to do in the evening and provide something. And obviously the youth cafe is a start for that, but a space to congregate is really important, and that needs to be a safe space, as in having CCTV coverage is really important. But for me as a woman, I know that these people would be employed to, like, you know, walk around in jackets. I found the COVID security guys quite intimidating, and I know they were doing a job, but it's just about like how we make spaces safer for young women as well as like the people we think are causing problems. It's like, actually, how do we, you know, not everyone's homes are safe, so people have to go out in the evenings and hang out somewhere. How do we make those spaces safe for everyone? And yeah, just enable kids to be, you know, hang out, because that's what kids want to do. That's what we all did when we were kids. Like, and when we're bored, we, you know, spray painted things, and that's, yeah. Anyway,
Thanks, Sean. Kevin?
Right, I'm going to be hated now. I think it's a really bad idea to encourage older youth, whatever, into the very cool play park. I think the smaller kids and the play equipment that is there, that works well to encourage a different demographic into there, to actually put up a big sign, come and hang out at Vancouver Play Park, is, I think, asking for trouble. Maybe I'm a horrible person, but I can see vandalism issues, I can see constant problems of complaint coming from people saying that the big kids are on the small kids' kit, and so on. And I've got no kids myself, but I have got 4 great nephews, and they're in the demographic that are just about using that play park, getting a bit old for it, but going over there. And they're basically saying to me, they don't want to see gangs of people, groups of people, let's try not to use pejorative language, but groups of older kids around the play park. They don't feel that sort of the younger kids and the older kids mix particularly well within that relatively small space. If the play park was 3, 5, 10 times bigger, maybe. But if you're going to do Wi-Fi shelter, if you're going to encourage people to congregate, then Coonan Play Park is not the place, in my opinion.
Okay. I'll go to Simon in there.
Sure. I think it's a really reasonable point. It's a reasonable question to ask. You know, what is the right thing to do? How do we do it properly? It's, you know, we need to investigate. We need to figure out what the right thing is. The question on the agenda as it stands now is to reinstate antisocial behaviour patrol. And without figuring out what the answer is and having a holistic strategy for the town, for me, having an antisocial behaviour patrol is a terrible idea. You're just asking people to move on from the area where everybody can see and go to areas where they can't see, and they're still going to be doing the same stuff. And all these arguments about, you know, giving you stuff to do. So maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong, I don't know, but there has to be a solution. And without that solution, I think patrol is a terrible idea.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, sorry. Yeah, Mike was sorry.
No, Carol, you...
There was an article I was reading recently about Polseth having issues with the youth having parties, etc., and they have just introduced patrols purely because they don't want the place getting the reputation of being party town and to make people feel safe. That's
Mike.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this is an incredibly complex problem.
Yeah.
And, you know, Sean hit the nail on the head. We're effectively, you know, not to put too fine a point on it, in many cases, we're just dealing with piss poor parenting. And we're being asked to solve that. I've been messaged during this meeting, I'm quite happy to have my phone around so you can all read it. There's 2 lads, he gives me their names, I won't read it out. running around the park at the moment carrying knives.
Yeah.
They're about 10 or 11. Alright? So you can get your CCTV and you can have your kids in that park. Are you going to deal with them? Who's going to take... I could take a 10 or 11-year-old kid with a knife. I spent 2 years in the military. But if you're a single mum in that park tonight, what are you doing? The police might be in Launceston if you're lucky. They might be dealing with an RTA between Launceston and Tavistock. It's a huge, that's 10 and 11-year-old kids in our town. You know, building a shelter. If they're rocking up with knives, they're just going to rob the people in it. So I don't want to put a massive downer on it, but this is a hugely complex problem. You know, I mean, I've got a beach up. Every single day I go down there, the first thing I have to do is get a dustpan brush out and sweep up all the glass before I let my kids come down. I mean, that's just kids being kids, but, you know, you've got to be a special kind of numpty to drink a bottle of beer and I can't smash it. You know, when we all do daft things, but it's a societal problem that we're going to try and fix. You know, the cameras, patrols, you know, it's...
I'm just going to go to Paul and then I'm going to have to vote for us to extend the meeting in a minute.
What I would suggest, Madam Chair, is perhaps funding a special constable or something. Somebody trained, you know, ask the police, we want to increase this, can we fund one? And there's somebody else on patrol. Because in other areas, you know, big cities, there's thousands of police around, you know. There's just no police in this area. And kids know that.
This is the thing.
Peter?
Far better off to give somebody like Jamie's group more funding.
Yeah, that's
Both.
terrifying.
Yes, Mr. Jennings.
There was enough coppers in Bude yesterday, dinner time.
I knew he was going to say
You got no trouble getting them when you want them.
They were there.
They were there,
Okay.
5 of them, 2 cars.
Right.
Some were out, didn't have any.
Okay, so
We don't need to do anything with that, do we?
no, I suppose all I want to know,
We have to
very informally, I guess, which is not usual for a council meeting, but just a show of hands, who is like, no, I don't think patrol is the way to go.
It depends where the patrol
Well,
is.
yeah,
Yes.
okay.
The authority of that patrol. Yes,
Okay.
you know, I think go CCTV,
Yeah.
but not at the beach
Yeah.
house where kids are getting changed.
Yeah, okay.
I'm happy for you just leave it on the table.
Yeah, you don't know. Yeah, if you
That's
haven't
fine.
resolved anything, nothing gets done.
No.
But yeah, you can
Okay.
return to.
I
Well,
think
we
I'm going to have a few more conversations. I think.
Shouldn't we let the police know our concerns?
Well, that was going to be one of my conversations. I spoke to one of the guys at the library the other day, and it was, what's he called, the tall guy.
Nick Jessup.
Yeah.
Nick Jessup.
That's it. Yeah, and he is fantastic, and he is very, very keen to help the youth of the area.
Yeah.
You know, not be having to sit around and do things they shouldn't. So I think if I have a conversation with him,
Fine.
and then perhaps come back to this. I just wanted to kind of get everyone's feelings. So yeah, okay. Yes.
All I was going to say is we always assume that it's a behavioural issue, it's a police issue, it's a whatever issue. Back in the day, every door of every beach hut was kicked in. There was glass everywhere, but there was staff to clean it up. Many of the things that we now identify as antisocial behaviour issues, in the old days we associated as cleansing issues. And we had blokes in orange overalls, because I was one of them, who went around and sorted it out. We deliberately put weak screws in the doors of beach huts, so they forced the screws out. We came along in the morning, put back in. Beach hut tenants never knew, because we were doing it before the beach hut tenants got down there. So what we're identifying as antisocial behaviour and chasing police, I think we should be chasing Cornwall Council to get some more cleaning staff into the town at different times of the day.
Interesting point. Yeah. I'm going to have to propose that we extend the meeting. If I say by half an hour, that's what I normally do, isn't it? So, yeah, by 30 minutes. Thank you. All those in favour? Okay. No. To authorise spend on the triangle tree to produce street furniture and other items.
Well, again, I think this is another one which has been discussed at Oversight Committee. I think, again, the proposals have gone round in terms of there is a wave bench of a particular design which is a little bit abstract or whatever, funky, whatever you want to call it, but certainly different, which can be made. There's also proposals around an octagonal table and bench outward facing here, and some memorabilia plaque things that can be made. But again, in terms of, there is no set aside or defined budget for that, so it's come to full council for a decision. All these things, none of these things are cheap. There is room in the triangle for 4 2.5 metre benches, up to 4. And the cost of a bench is 1,650. That's the cost of producing them out of the tree. So if you went for 4, that's £6,600.
It didn't include the chopping.
There will be additional costs which I do not have, but there will be an additional cost of actually cutting the trees the size of the timber out of the tree in the first place.
Cool.
I'm telling you, I didn't like that bench idea. I thought it was stupid. That's one. Benches are obviously going to be used. I did see yesterday the whole area was, the walls had the visitors sitting on it very happily. Nobody was in the green, but they were sitting happily on the wall. So benches would be very useful. That's quite expensive. You know, to me, you could get some, recycled plastic ones.
That's
you could do the
yeah,
job much better. Yeah, so you are paying more, but it's and it's going to rot.
Peter, I'm going to come to Katie.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure of the architectural properties of the wood that comes out of that tree, but I don't think they last that long.
It was fine. We discussed this before. It's used quite a lot actually in outdoor furniture and stuff.
Yeah, outdoor furniture.
Okay, well, just to let me finish the point up. When we embarked on this journey of saying,
choice of words.
Embarked, yes, on this journey of the trees falling down, there's a public outcry of loss and over the thing. Yeah, let's try and preserve some of it and use it again in a positive way. I sort of had it fixed in my mind, I don't know why, that we'd probably send a chunk of it off to a sawmill that would be like made into stuff that we could actually construct things with, like slats of wood to make a bench. That wouldn't necessarily be a massive cost. And I just feel in my heart the public would be quite supportive of that. But obviously we've gone down another direction of inviting artists in to involve themselves in the project, wonderful. But the costs that have come back have been a bit of an off-putter for me, I'm afraid. And I honestly think that if we were to consult the big review, would you want £6,500 spent on making super duper benches out of the tree? I'm not sure what response I'd get. I'm not sure it'd be that great. If I'm perfectly honest. I know we've done a really good job with it, but I just think it might be over-egging the pudding.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Yes,
Katie. So that came up at oversight was I don't think anyone's keen on the octagonal table and the way that it pointed outwards, because it doesn't mean that someone's actually talking. Like having something that pointed inwards would be better. The other thing, which I think is obviously of course, if you handcraft something, you need to be. I've always been really pro paying artists. Artists still need to pay the rent. They still need to cover their bills in terms of treating things or materials or just even buying drill bits and stuff. They still need to be, even if they don't charge for their own time, they still need their costs covered. And I think that's, to be honest, personally, I wouldn't necessarily go out to get a hand-piece crafted thing, but actually I think a hand the thing that they've offered here with the price that they're charging is actually very reasonable. It is just covering their labour costs. I think you'd be very hard pressed to get a professional to go out and do this. And to be honest, after looking at the expense of the play equipment that I've been looking at, it's really, really cheap, trust me. It's like super cheap compared to lot play equipment, which is much simpler than what they're suggesting here. It's also probably just, away of the times. In terms of the actual placement as well, assuming to be the triangle, and obviously we've got the town team want to do a consultation or the future of triangle, etc., etc. But another alternative space in the meantime could actually be the play park that we're proposing, or potentially one of the proposals, just because one of the proposals theming is a Nautic theme, and actually wave-like designs, I know they're really popular with the public when they were going through this, but could fit that nautical theme actually really, really well. And again, make it actually into a quite unique space that could be quite an attraction for local visitors or people like a way to come to, having this incredibly strongly themed area. So, I mean, yeah, that's just observations. I don't know what I exactly feel like in any way, sense, or form about this right now, but yeah, I hope that helps.
Can I just add, from an officer point of view, we would like some kind of direction.
Yes.
We have a large tree stump in the yard, and it's taking up a fair amount of space, and if we don't do something with it soon, it will just rot. And, we just...
May I suggest it's sold, just sell it, and with the sale of it,
I mean, back to our
it's only a
original
motive.
desire here, the picture here with the octagonal bench and the wave bench, this is all part of the repurpose movement and Viewed Man's Shed organisations dedicated to community well-being. Mustn't lose sight of the people that have drawn these. It's good community projects as well. Yes, Kevin.
I take on board what people are saying about cost, and a utilitarian use of the wood would be obviously cheaper, but I also believe that there is a strong desire in the town, and certainly when the tree fell down, there was a strong desire to make some kind of statement piece. Now, originally I heard things like a Celtic cross or something of that nature. That seems to have gone away, but we are still left with the opportunity to get a statement piece in terms of the benches. And maybe we don't want to have a maximum number of benches, but I would still believe that at least some of that would be used for a statement or artistic piece. And if that's going to be sort of $3 grand, I don't think the people of Bude are going to object to that. I mean, I don't object to that, and I'm a stingy lover.
So that would be the 3 octagonal tables you're proposing effectively.
Well, I would take the view that at least one of the wave benches, but we don't necessarily have to get a maximum number of wave benches, do we?
I mean,
He's stated that it has to be a minimum order of 6. So £1,600 a pop, isn't it?
It's 10 grand altogether.
Yeah, that's why I was confused.
Sorry, that was my so.
Yes, he's covering his.
I didn't appreciate there was a minimum order.
Yeah, he's packed that bit on the bottom there.
I retract my previous statement.
Can I just actually clarify, because Steve and the individual have been in correspondence. And I must admit, the last bit doesn't quite read right. The last email I've seen, which came yesterday, which... No, but this is what went to August. This is what went... He's given another price range.
See, I'm a little bit behind because the last proposal I was looking at is obviously where the guys in the project were talking and they say Tom and I have agreed that good use of the timber would be to have the trunk and branches split into 2 large furniture projects and to use the offcuts and smaller pieces to produce a number of smaller commemorative pieces. So in my mind I was thinking, oh right, yeah, so we're going to have a wave bench, not octagonal, and then some smaller bits. And that was that, but obviously that's not the latest.
To be honest, I'm up for getting 6 wave benches for 10 grand. I think that's really good. I think they're lovely, and put them around the town, put them in different places, attach things to them and say this was the tree that was down the triangle, put 3 of them in the triangle, 1 out of Stratton, 10 grand for those, it's bargain.
Yeah, they are artworks as well. It's not just a bench, it's like that's basically a piece of sculpture as well, so it's kind of
25 grand on Christmas light, 10 grand for 6 benches that are going to last a long time.
used throughout the year.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay. So we would need to go to 6.
Yep, okay, I'll run with that and basis.
Okay.
So can I clarify,
Yes,
do, we
sorry.
have, do we have a figure then for what, if we wanted to just go with the wave benches then, or
6 is 9,900.
is that what we're proposing? And then we also suggested that any bits they wanted to do in terms of the memorabilia, it was there.
Yes,
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
strongly suggest
Yes.
that, we don't want to start buying bits and trying
Yeah.
to resell that. If there's a community group that,
Yeah.
the man show, whatever, that wants to do that, we can
Just give it to
allow.
them. Yeah. Okay. Was there any other comments? I lost track of hands in the end. Yes.
Yeah, there was from me. So I remember at the time somebody said that there was several £1,000s worth of value in that timber, and I don't think we're actually going to use. I can't remember what proportion of the timber we used to make 6 benches, but there's masses up there. And I was with the facilities manager yesterday. Remember that one? And he said he was desperate to get rid of it, as the town clerk did say to us.
Yeah.
So I think that we should try and formulate a proposal. I'm happy to roll with a 6. I never wanted to suggest that the work proposed by the artist wasn't value for money. What I did want to suggest was that a functional bench for somebody to sit on doesn't have to cost that much.
Yeah.
All right. So, and I'm happy to accept the value in the art and the manufacture. Okay. So what I'm thinking we should do is we should formulate a proposal that says, yeah, okay, we'll go for the 6 benches, but the rest of the wood needs to be disposed of or maybe try and sell it to offset the costs of that project.
Yeah, if you can authorise the facilities manager to dispose of it at best value, and then I've got no idea.
After the men's shutters and the other points, obviously. Yeah. Yes.
Well, all I was going to say is the trouble is, with wood, the premium is in what's going to be used for the benches. What you're going to be left with is the smaller stuff. And rather than being an asset that's got value, you're talking really forward.
If it's a couple £100 for logs, so yeah, but it needs, I think we need to give that authority to the facilities manager to get shot of it.
Yeah.
Is that a proposal?
Yes.
I would second that proposal very happy.
All those in favour of that one then? Thank you. That's all, Chris. Okay, thank you very much. Were you happy with that one?
We got it all.
Okay. So, because we've obviously got a couple of new councillors on board, we do still have some vacancies on some of the committees. So I just wanted to go over them again in case we have any more takers, really. So, I haven't got your list.
I thought it was in the pack, but I can't.
Planning 3 vacancies.
Yeah, I've got down how many.
Oh, yeah,
there are.
there's
I
a
don't
few
know
was
who's
on-
on it.
Who was on what?
So planning committee, we've got 3 vacancies currently. Oh, thank you. Brilliant. Yes, Peter?
I served on the planning committee for about 15 years and I came off at the beginning of this year.
Yeah.
I would be happy to go back on it.
Brilliant. Cool. Okay.
Now that it's working.
Okay.
How many vacancies are
There's
there?
3.
I'd be quite interested in
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Yes.
Crack on. The more the merrier.
There's only
3 it says there.
Chris is there every time.
Planning.
It says 3.
Chris is
sorry.
You got it.
I've gone mad.
Is there 2?
No,
Or is
my
there not?
mistake. There's
there's one.
There's one. I've put it in the wrong. Sorry, I put it in the wrong order.
There is oversight is 3.
There is one, but I think
I'll come off.
I think
I'll
Simon
come off
wants to
planning
come
and
off.
space. It's going to go. Absolutely.
Oversight. There's 3. What am I writing?
Sorry, I'm
No,
obviously
don't
the
worry.
order.
So sorry,
Sorry.
let's start that one again. So planning committee is 1 vacancy. So it's
Out.
Well, that's,
So
there's,
I
Simon's
will withdraw from
there's now 2 vacancies.
So there's now 2.
But you come all the time, Simon, and that's real
There it's
shame
good.
that you.
There it's
So Simon Billing. Okay, so where are we? Planning.
So without Peter.
So Peter and Vicky have proposed, that they are voted on to planning committee. Second that, all those in favour?
You can vote for yourself as well.
Okay, so.
Yep.
Fine.
So oversight's the one with 3
Yeah.
vacancies.
If you can put up with me,
Thursdays.
I'll rock up on a Thursday. Thursday
Ah,
I'm good.
Fantastic. So oversight, yes, that was 3 you said, okay. So Kevin, so far? Anyone else? Vicky?
I actually found it quite interesting attending it the other evening, so yes.
Oh, fantastic. Brilliant. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. So I propose that Vicky and Kevin join the oversight committee. All those in favour then, please? Thank you very much. That's everybody. That's wonderful. Thank you very much, both. That's great. And the last one, no, not the last one. We've got staffing committee. We've got 1 vacancy on that one. Is that right? Yep.
Tends to be on Thursdays.
Yes. Yes. Peter?
I'm very interested in how progress is made with relation to the previous agenda item.
Yes.
And I'm very interested that we make sure that we set our stall out properly to the consultants that are coming forward.
Yes.
And I feel that I could help in that, and I'd be very happy to be considered for that role.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else want to put themselves forward?
Sorry, I was absorbing the bullshit.
Okay, so I propose that Peter is voted in on the staffing committee. All those in favour? That's everybody. Okay, and a BSTC rep on the Bude Valley Management Advisory Group. Thank you. That does sound. I appreciated the explanation about it, Chris, as well, because that does sound very beneficial. Yes.
I'm technically happy to go on.
Yeah.
Technically
Are
happy.
you?
I'm not
happy?
going to actually happy. But I could do it.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to go berserk.
Peter?
I just wanted to say,
Yes.
and this isn't bullshit, I believe. Right, the biggest risk coming forward in the next 5 to 10 years for Bude, in my opinion, is the maintenance and ongoing maintenance of the lock gates, harbour and the canal, right? Because I know that Cornwall Council has absolutely got its neck wrung for finances. It doesn't want to spend the money. So it's really important we make sure that we do represent ourselves well on this group. I'm going anyway as a Cornwall councillor.
All right, okay.
So you don't need it to be me. Right, but I'll be happy for somebody to come along and really, but I want a strong voice from the council.
Yeah, brilliant.
Certainly, I'll be very strong.
Well, I think we should only use trusted people officers of it.
Would you like to put yourself forward as well? So you and Paul?
Oh,
Fantastic.
team. Oh,
Team
hey. 80.
Okay. Fine. If there are no other, yes, I'd propose these two.
Right.
Okay, all those in favour then?
Yep.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Thank you very much. That's wonderful.
I've written it down.
Right, so then I'll just stop and take it down. Yeah.
Okay.
December.
Thank you. Schedule of payments already made between the 15th of July and the 4th of August.
Proposed noted.
All those in favour? And schedule of payments to be made on the 5th of August.
Yeah. A proposed made.
That you say.
I'll second that.
All those in favour then, please. Thank you. That's everybody. Thank you very much. Close of meeting.